And so, we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy, in the most pleasant way. In our time together tonight, there is nothing to examine, nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a story that waits for you in the flickering gaslight and deep shadows of another time. We're going to let the modern world melt away, and in its place, we'll find the soft, hissing sound of a gas lamp on a cobblestone street, a story that begins behind a painted curtain. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this place, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. And as you do, or simply choose not to, you might feel a quiet sense of connection, knowing others are listening at this very same moment. If you feel moved too, you can leave a comment below with your city and the time on your clock. It's a lovely way to see the quiet, peaceful web we are all weaving together tonight. Alright, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing. And together, let's allow the story to begin. The first thing you notice is the damp. It's a deep, penetrating chill that seems to rise from the very stones beneath your feet, clinging to your clothes and turning your breath into a pale mist. You've just stepped off a train, or perhaps a carriage. It doesn't quite matter. What matters is that you are here, in the heart of London, in the latter half of the 19th century. You pull your coat a little tighter. The air is thick, not just with moisture, but with the smell of a million lives being lived on top of one another. There's the sharp, acrid scent of coal smoke from countless chimneys, a constant, greasy perfume that coats the back of your throat. Beneath that, there's the earthy, almost sweet smell of horses and wet hay, mixed with the less pleasant notes of unwashed bodies in the River Thames, which carries the city's secrets downstream. It's a symphony of smells, and none of them are subtle. You stand on the corner of a street, watching the city move. Then my, how it moves. The sound is a constant. No roar. The clatter of iron-shod horses on slick, grey cobblestones. The rumble of heavy cart wheels. The distant, mournful whistle of a steam engine. Shouts of vendors selling everything from hot pies to dubious-looking oysters echo off the tall, soot-stained brick buildings that lean into each other as if for support. This is the center of the world, the engine of a vast, globe-spanning empire, and you can see its wealth in flashes. A gleaming private carriage rushes past, splashing muddy water onto the pavement, through its beveled glass window. You catch a glimpse of a woman in silks, her face a pale oval, and a man with a top hat and a silver-tipped cane. They are a world away, separated from you by just a thin pane of glass and an ocean of money. Then, just as quickly, your eyes fall upon a small child, no older than 7, with a face smudged with grime, barefoot on the cold stones. The child isn't playing. They are trying to sell you a box of matches, their eyes old and tired. This is the great paradox of Victorian London, a place of staggering opulence and bone-deep poverty, living side by side, pretending not to see each other. The famous London fog, the pea souper as they call it, begins to roll in. This isn't the clean, romantic mist of a country morning. It's a thick, yellow-brown blanket, heavy with smoke and chemicals from the factories. It muffles the sound, blurring the edges of the world. Gas lamps are being lit now, one by one, by a man with a long pole. They don't illuminate so much as create small, lonely islands of hazy or inch light in the growing gloom. These lights make the shadows deeper, longer, and full of secrets. You can see figures moving in the fog, their forms indistinct and ghostly until they are almost upon you. Historians, even now, in their quiet university offices, are still debating whether this new industrial world, with all its steam and dine and relentless progress, was truly a step forward for the average person. Was it building a new kind of prosperity, or just a more efficient, more crowded kind of misery? From where you're standing, watching the ghosts in the fog, it feels like the answer is a complicated both. You begin to walk, with no real destination in mind. You are just one more anonymous soul adrift in this overwhelming sea of humanity. You press through the crowds, a river of bowler hats and bonnets, of ragged shawls and tailored coats. Everyone is rushing, everyone has a purpose, a place to be. You feel a little lost, a little small, and it's in this moment of feeling adrift that a new sound cuts through the din. It's a rhythmic, insistent beat of a drum, accompanied by the loud, theatrical call of a man's voice. It's coming from just down a narrow side street, a place where the gaslight seems to burn a little brighter, a little more invitingly. Your feet, almost of their own accord, begin to turn towards it. You follow the sound, letting the drumbeat pull you forward like a current. The side street is narrower here, the buildings leaning in so close they seem to whisper to each other over your head. The crowd is thicker, more boisterous, a different energy from the purposeful rush of the main thoroughfare. Here, people are lingering, drawn by the same magnetic pull that has captured you. The air is sweeter, laced with the scent of roasting chestnuts and hot sugar from a nearby vendor's cart. A cloying mask over the city's deeper, grittier smells. And then you see it, the source of the spectacle. Stretched between two grimy buildings is a massive, painted banner, maybe 20 feet long. It snaps and cracks in the wind, the heavy conveys making a sound like a ship's sail in a storm. In the unsteady, flickering light of several large gas torches stake into the ground, the images on it seem to wriggle and drift with a life of their own. The artwork is crude but powerfully effective. It's a riot of color, bold reds, shocking yellows, deep blues, all outlined in thick, black lines designed to be seen from a distance. Even in this gloom, the banner promises a collection of marvels, a gallery of the impossible. On the far left, a man so impossibly tall his head seems to touch the swirling clouds painted above him. Next to him, a woman of impossibly delicate proportions, standing beside a normal-sized chair that looks like a throne. There is a painting of a man with skin like alligator hide, and another of a woman whose face is covered in a thick, flowing beard. These itinerant banner artists were a unique, and often anonymous, breed of folk painter. They knew exactly how to exaggerate a feature without losing its recognizability, how to use flat planes of color to create an image that would lodge itself in the mind of a passerby. It wasn't fine art, by any stretch. It was a commercial art, designed for one purpose: to get you to stop, to stare, and to reach into your pocket. Below these vibrant, larger-than-life figures, gold, swirling letters proclaim the show's title: BRTHOLWSCONGRESSOFCURIOUSSOULS. The word curious does a lot of work there, suggesting something both scientific and strange, educational and titillating all at once. Standing on a small wooden crate in front of the banner is the man with the voice. H.E.S. the showman, the bulker. H.E.S. dressed in a slightly too tight waistcoat of faded velvet, a dented top hat perched on his head. His face is ruddy, animated by the torchlight, and he projects his voice over the noise of the crowd, a perfect blend of gravel and honey. Step right up, he booms, his arms outstretched as if to embrace the entire city. Leave the dreary, the grey, the common world behind, for behind this humble canvas, I have gathered for your edification and amazement the most singular, the most astounding, the most peculiar personages ever assembled under one roof. He points a dramatic finger at the painted giant. Have you ever wondered what the world looks like from the heavens? Young Master Albion here dines on clouds and uses the moon for a nightlight. A few people in the crowd chuckle, a mix of amusement and disbelief. He moves his finger to the bearded lady. Have you ever seen a woman more lovely, more fair? By Venus, I tell you, with the beard of a mighty Jupiter. This is the art of the showman, to take a real person with a real, often difficult, medical condition, and wrap them in a story, A myth. It's part of the performance. Historians argue to this day about how much the Victorian audience truly believed these fantastical claims. Were they gullible? Or were they willing participants in the humbug, as the great American showman P.T. Barnum would call it? Perhaps they enjoyed the feeling of being cleverly tricked just as much as they enjoyed the spectacle itself. You watch the faces in the crowd. They are a perfect cross-section of London. A young clerk with an ink stain on his finger. A couple of soldiers in their red coats. A weary-looking woman clutching a market basket. Even a well-dressed gentleman who seems to be trying, unfailing, to look merely curious and not utterly captivated. Their faces are all upturned, bathed in the dancing torchlight. Their expressions a cocktail of skepticism and a deep, undeniable, human curiosity. The Barker senses he has their attention. He lowers his voice conspiratorially. They are not monsters, my friends, he says, his tone now soft and sincere. A practiced and powerful shift. They are marvels. They are living, breathing proof that the world is wider and stranger than you could ever imagine from your ledgers and your workshops. And for a price, a paltry price, you can see them for yourself. He pauses for effect, letting the silence hang in the air. A penny, he roars, suddenly loud again. Just one penny to witness the wonders that Mother Nature herself keeps hidden from the timid. A single penny to change the way you see the world. The pitch is perfect. He isn't just selling a ticket. He's selling an experience, a secret, a moment of wonder in a world that is often anything but. You feel a subtle shift in the crowd as a few people reach into their pockets. The spell has been cast. And you, too, find your hand dipping into your coat. Your fingers closing around the smooth, worn surface of a copper coin. It's worn from your body. A small, solid piece of your reality. You step forward, towards the entrance of the tent. A simple, heavy canvas flap that looks dark and mysterious. The drum starts its beat again. A heartbeat for the strange world that waits inside. You hand your penny to a stoop, older man sitting on a stool just inside the entrance. He doesn't look at you, just scoops the coin into a heavy wooden box already brimming with copper. His fingers are stained with ink or grease, and his face is a mask of weary indifference. He's seen thousands of faces like yours, all lit with the same fleeting curiosity. To him, this is just a job. You push past a thick, musty-smelling canvas flap. For a moment, you are in complete darkness, a disorienting sensory void between the noisy street and whatever lies ahead. Then, you step through. The world inside is both bigger and smaller than you expected. It's a large, round tent, the canvas ceiling soaring high above you, supported by a massive central pole. The air is warm and thick, heavy with the commingled sense of damp sawdust scattered on the ground. The animal-like smell of unwashed bodies, the faint whiff of cheap perfume, and the oily, metallic tang of the gas lamps that provide the only light. The lamps, a series of jets arranged on iron stands, is softly, casting a stark, dramatic light that creates deep, dancing shadows. The world in here is all harsh light and black voids, with no gentle gradients in between. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, a mixture of packed earth and a generous layer of sawdust that crunches softly with every step. It's a clever trick. This sawdust, it covers the mud, absorbs spills, and DDNS, the sound just enough to create a sense of hushed reverence, almost like a church. The crowd from the street has followed you in, pressing around you. They are quieter now, their boisterous energy replaced by a nervous, shuffling anticipation. They speak in whispers, their eyes wide as they adjust to the gloom. You are all equals in here, for a moment. The young clerk, the soldiers, the market woman, the gentleman, all just pairs of eyes in the dark, waiting for the show to begin. At the far end of the tent is a low wooden stage, about 2 feet high, draped in a cheap, wine-colored velvet fabric that has seen better days. It's frayed at the edges and stained in places, but in the forgiving gaslight, it looks almost grand. There are a few mismatched chairs and a small table on the stage, props waiting for their players. Suddenly, the barker from outside appears on the stage. Inside the tent, without the competition of the street noise, his voice seems even more powerful. He holds a long, slender cane in one hand, which he taps smartly against the wooden floorboards to get everyone's attention. "Welcome," he says, his voice dropping to a more intimate, theatrical tone. "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a place where the unbelievable is made real. You have left the ordinary world behind. Here, the rules of nature are creatively interpreted." He smiles a thin, knowing smile. HES acknowledging the artifice, making you a co-conspirator in the grand illusion. "Now," he continues, "I must ask for your discretion. The personages you are about to meet are sensitive souls. They are not here for your ridicule, but for your considered contemplation. They are, I assure you, living, breathing human beings, just as you and I. This is a crucial part of the performance, a delicate balancing act. He has to present his performance as otherworldly marvels, but also as humans deserving of a certain respect. It's a way of giving the audience permission to stare, framing their voyeurism as a form of intellectual curiosity. This very tension between seeing a person as a specimen and seeing them as a fellow human is what made these shows so powerfully compelling and so deeply troubling. The barker gestures to the side of the stage. "First, allow me to introduce a marvel of the modern age, a man whose very skin tells a story. I present to you the illustrated man." From behind a drab curtain, a man walks onto the stage. He is stripped to the waist, and his torso, arms, and even his face are a dense tapestry of tattoos. In the dim, flickering light, the images seem to move and drift on his skin. Snakes, dragons, sailing ships, portraits of forgotten queens. Tattooing was, for a long time, the province of sailors and soldiers. But in the late 19th century, a new technology, the electric tattooing machine, invented in 1891, made the process faster and more precise. The illustrated man became a staple of sideshows, a living canvas for this new art form. It was a strange kind of exhibition, one that didn't rely on a congenital condition, but on a deliberate and often painful choice. Some historians suggest these performers were early pioneers of body modification, while others argue they were simply desperate men who found one of the few ways to make a living from their own skin. The man stands perfectly still, turning slowly to allow the audience to see him from all angles. His face is a blank, practiced mask. He doesn't meet anyone's gaze. He is an object on display, and he has learned to inhabit that role completely. The crowd murmurs. A low hum of astonishment. You can hear someone near you whisper, "Did he do that to himself?" The question hangs in the air. You look at the man, at the intricate patterns that cover him from neck to wrist, and you realize you are not just looking at pictures. You are looking at a life story, written in ink, displayed for a penny, but it's a story you can tread, a language you don't understand. You can only look at the surface and wonder. The show has begun, and you are already caught in its strange, uncomfortable spell. The illustrated man turns and exits the stage as silently as he arrived, the curtain swishing closed behind him. The barker lets the moment of all linger. A master of timing, he watches the crowd, a shepherd tending his flock of gaping mouths and wide eyes. He knows he has you now. The initial disbelief has been replaced by a willing suspension of it. You are ready to see more. Astonishing, is it not? He says, his voice a smooth purr. A man who carries his life's art upon his very skin. But what of those whose art was chosen for them? By a force far greater than a needle and ink. By Mother Nature herself. He gestures dramatically to the other side of the stage, from the snowy peaks of the Caucasus Mountains, where the air is thin and men grow to prodigious heights. I bring you, the Colossus of the North, the one, the only, Albion the Giant. The velvet curtain pulls back with a theatrical flourish, and a figure has to duck to get through the opening. As he straightens up, a collective gasp ripples through the crowd. The man is enormous. He must be well over 7 feet tall. A mountain of a man in a world where the average height was closer to 5.5 feet. He is dressed in what is meant to look like a rustic northern costume, a loose-fitting tunic, sunset rim, and soft leather boots, all of which is slightly too small for him, making him seem even larger. He walks to the center of the stage, his movements slow and deliberate, almost clumsy. The simple wooden stage groans under his weight with each step. He stands there, blinking in the gaslight, his head nearly brushing the canvas ceiling. His hands, which hang at his sides, are the size of dinner plates. You look at his face. It's a large, broad face, with features that seem slightly out of proportion, a prominent jaw, a heavy brow. But it's his eyes that hold your attention. They are a pale, gentle blue, and they seem lost. He isn't looking at the crowd. He is looking over the crowd, his gaze fixed on the back of the tent, as if he is 1,000 miles away. There is a profound sadness in his expression, a weariness that seems to settle deep in his massive bones. This is the reality behind the spectacle. Most of these giants suffered from a condition called acromegaly, a disorder of the pituitary gland that causes an overproduction of growth hormone. While it created their marketable height, it also came with a host of painful and debilitating health problems: joint pain, headaches, failing eyesight, and a significantly shortened lifespan. They were, in a very real sense, growing themselves to death. The barker walks over and stands next to Albion, the contrast in their heights almost comical. "Behold," the barker proclaims, slapping the giant's thigh with a familiarity that seems entirely one-sided. A true son of giants. He can lift a horse with one hand and drinks from a barrel as if it were a teacup. Albion doesn't react. He just stands there, a silent, melancholy monument. A velvet rope has been strung along the front of the stage, a simple, symbolic barrier separating the audience from the exhibits. It keeps you at a safe distance, reinforcing the idea that these are not people you could meet on the street. They are other. They are specimens. But you find your gaze drifting past the rope. Beyond the carefully constructed narrative of the barker, you see the worn fabric of Albion's tunic, the way his large knuckles are swollen with arthritis. You see a tremor in his hand that he tries to still by clenching it into a fist. You see a human being in immense, chronic pain, whose entire existence has been reduced to a single, marketable attribute: his height. There's a constant debate among historians about the agency of these performers. Were they purely victims of exploitation? Or did they find a measure of power and independence in their unique circumstances? For some, the sideshow was a refuge, the only place they could earn a living and find a community that understood them. For others, it was a gilded cage, a life sentence of being stared at. Looking at Albion's distant, sad eyes, you suspect he falls into the latter category. The barker is now encouraging him to perform a feat of strength, handing him a thick iron bar. With a sigh that is audible even over the murmuring crowd, Albion takes the bar. He holds it up, and with a visible, straining effort, bends it into a U shape. The crowd applauds. A spatter of sound in the enclosed tent. Albion drops the bent bar to the stage with a loud clang. He doesn't bow. He doesn't smile. He just looks out, over your heads, at a horizon only he can see. You find yourself looking not at the spectacle, but at the man. You are no longer just a customer who has paid a penny for a thrill. You are a witness. And what you are witnessing feels less like a marvel and more like a quiet tragedy, playing out in the flickering, unforgiving light of the gas lamps. Albion the giant shuffles off the stage, the heavy curtain falling behind him like a final, somber note. The barker, ever the master of ceremonies, quickly moves to fill the void, launching into another grandiloquent introduction. But your attention has wandered. Your gaze is drawn to a gap in the backdrop, a place where the velvet curtain doesn't quite meet the central tent pole. Through that sliver of darkness, You catch a glimpse of the world backstage. It's a place of shadows and clutter. You see stacked wooden crates, a half-empty pail of water, and a pile of discarded costumes. It's the unglamorous machinery that keeps the spectacle running. And in the middle of it all, you see Albion. He has sunk onto a large, reinforced wooden chest that is clearly his designated chair. He moves with a pained slowness that was only hinted at on stage. He hunches over, his massive frame curled in on itself, his head in his hands. He looks smaller now, not in stature, but in spirit. The Colossus of the North is gone. In his place is just a man, exhausted and in pain, trying to find a moment of peace. Another figure moves into your line of sight. It's the indifferent man who took your penny at the door. He walks over to Albion and hands him a tin cup filled with water. Albion takes it, his huge, trembling hand almost swallowing the cup. He nods his thanks, a small, weary gesture, and takes a long, slow drink. There's a quiet, unspoken understanding between them. The ticket taker isn't a showman, he's a functionary. And in this private space, the hierarchy of the show seems to dissolve. They are just two men, sharing a quiet moment in the wings. You realize you are intruding on a private moment, but you can't look away. This glimpse behind the curtain is more real, more compelling than anything happening on the stage. The public spectacle is a carefully crafted illusion. This is the truth. This backstage life was a world unto itself, while the performers were on display for hours. Their private lives were compressed into these small, cluttered spaces. Here, they ate. They rested. They argued. They formed friendships. It was often the only place where they could drop the persona they were forced to inhabit on stage and simply be themselves, whatever that meant. A quirky but telling detail of this life was the constant struggle for customized belongings. Imagine being Albion. You couldn't just walk into a shop and buy a chair that wouldn't collapse under your weight, or a bed long enough for you to lie down in. Performers had to have everything custom-made or learn to adapt to a world that was not built for them. This led to a strange, almost surreal domesticity backstage. Miniature tea sets for the diminutive, extra-large cutlery for the giants, specially designed clothes that accommodated unique bodies. These objects were more than just practical necessities. They were affirmations of their existence in a world that often treated them as if they shouldn't exist at all. Your attention is pulled back to the stage by a new wave of applause. The barker is presenting another act, but you've lost the thread. Your focus remains on that sliver of truth you see through the curtain. Albion finishes his water and sets the cup down. He reaches into a large pocket in his tunic and pulls out something small. At first, you can't make it out. Then he holds it up, cradled in his enormous palm. It's a bird, a tiny, carved wooden bird, no bigger than his thumb. He strokes it with one finger, his touch surprisingly delicate. His face, which was a mask of weary pain just moments before, softens. A faint, sad smile touches his lips. Where did he get it? Did he carve it himself in the long, lonely hours between shows? Was it a gift from a loved one, a reminder of a life before this one? You'll never know. But in that moment, the giant holding the tiny bird is the most powerful image you've seen tonight. It's a perfect symbol of his life. A huge, powerful body in which a small, gentle soul is trapped. It is a soul that finds comfort not in grand feats of strength, but in a small, secret, beautiful thing that he can hold in the palm of his hand. The existence of such personal, private moments is something academic historians still grapple with. It complicates the simple narrative of victimization. Finding evidence of these quiet acts of selfhood, a hobby, a friendship, a secret treasure, is difficult. They weren't documented in the showmen's ledgers or on the promotional posters. They exist only in the occasional diary entry or a third-hand account. Fragile ghosts of an inner life. How much autonomy did these performers truly have? Were these small comforts enough to make the life bearable? The answer probably varies from person to person. from day to day. The ticket taker says something to Albion that you can't hear. Albion nods, carefully tucks the wooden bird back into his pocket, and uses the chest to push his massive frame back to a standing position. He is preparing to be a spectacle again. The private moment is over. The curtain, in a metaphorical sense, is about to rise once more. And you feel a pang of something like guilt for having paid your penny to keep this man in his beautiful, tragic cage. Your gaze reluctantly leaves the backstage world as the barker's voice, now laced with a tone of mock reverence, commands your full attention. He is making a grand, sweeping bow towards the center of the stage, a gesture of almost chivalrous respect. And now, gentlemen, he proclaims, pointedly omitting the ladies in his address, a small, calculated piece of showmanship. Prepare to be enchanted. We have seen the colossal. Now, witness the exquisite. We have seen the giant. Now, behold the fairy. Direct from the royal courts of Europe, or so she would have you believe, I present to you, Her Majesty, the smallest queen, the pocket-sized potentate, the one and only Princess Tiny. The curtain parts, and a ghost, very different from the one that greeted Albion, ripples through the audience. It's a sound of collective, patronizing affection. On the stage, in a meticulously crafted miniature world, is a woman. She is perfectly proportioned, but of a strikingly small stature, no taller than a 7 or 8-year-old child. She is not presented as a curiosity of nature in the same way Albion was. Instead, she is the star of her own elaborate tableau. She sits on a tiny, ornate throne, a perfect replica of a royal chair, upholstered in plush red velvet. Beside her is a small table, set with a miniature tea service so delicate it looks like it was made for a doll. Her feet, clad in tiny, buckled shoes, rest on a little needlepoint footstool. She is dressed in a magnificent gown of silk and lace, complete with a sparkling tiara in her perfectly coiffed hair. She doesn't just stand there to be looked at. She performs, with a regal, yet charming smile. She lifts a miniature teacup, her pinky finger extended just so, and takes a delicate, imaginary sip. She gives the audience a graceful little wave. The effect is utterly disarming. The crowd is captivated, not by a freak of nature, but by a masterful performance of royalty in miniature. Many of the most famous diminutive performers of the era, such as Charles Stratton, better known as General Tom Thumb, became international celebrities, promoted by impresarios like P.T. Barnum. They were presented not as medical oddities, but as enchanting, miniature adults. They would perform skits, sing songs, and stage elaborate, mock weddings with other small performers. This was a stroke of marketing genius. It shifted the narrative from the uncomfortable reality of what was then called dwarfism to a charming, family-friendly fantasy. Princess Tiny, as she is billed, clearly understands her role. She is the queen of this small stage, and she commands it with a quiet confidence that Albion lacked. There is no sadness in her eyes. Instead, there is a sharp, intelligent awareness. She looks directly at the audience, making eye contact, acknowledging their presence, but on her own terms. You get the distinct impression that she is not just being looked at. She is looking right back. There's an ongoing debate among scholars about the lives of these little people in the Victorian show world. On one hand, they were undoubtedly being exploited for their physical difference. On the other hand, a select few, like Tom Thumb, achieved immense fame and fortune, far beyond what would have been possible for them in any other profession. They had a level of agency that was denied too many other performers. They controlled their own acts, managed their own finances, and in many ways, became the impresarios of their own lives. They weren't just exhibits. They were stars. You watch Princess Tiny continue her silent, graceful performance. A small, but fascinating detail is the sheer craftsmanship of her surroundings, her tiny furniture, her perfectly scaled props. These were often made by highly skilled artisans. The creation of these miniature worlds was an industry in itself. Some performers even traveled with their own personal craftsmen to maintain and expand their sets. It was a crucial part of the illusion. For the audience to believe in the fantasy of the little people, their world had to be as perfect and convincing as possible. The barker begins to narrate her history. A fantastical tale of a lost royal lineage from a tiny, hidden kingdom in Bavaria. It's utter nonsense, of course. But it's what the audience wants to hear. They want the fairy tale. It's more comfortable than the medical reality. As he speaks, Princess Tiny picks up a small, ringing bell from her table and rings it. In response, a small, perfectly groomed poodle with a pink ribbon in its hair trots onto the stage, walks on its hind legs, and does a little twirl. The princess rewards it with a tiny biscuit from a porcelain dish. The crowd dissolves into a wave of oohs and ah. You have to admire her. She has taken the one thing that made her different. The one thing that could have condemned her to a life of poverty and ridicule, and she has turned it into a kingdom. A small, fragile, gaslit kingdom on a rickety wooden stage. Perhaps, but a kingdom nonetheless, and in it, she rules supreme. She has not just accepted her role, she has authored it, and you are her willing subjects, at least for the next few minutes. She is not a victim of the spectacle. She is its queen. Princess Tiny and her performing poodle take a final, graceful bow. The applause is what? Genuine. A sound of pure delight. As she makes her regal exit, you feel the atmosphere in the tent shift once more. The barker steps forward, and the playful, reverent tone he used for the princess is gone. His voice becomes more somber, more conspiratorial, as if he is about to share a delicate secret. We have seen the tall, and we have seen the small. He begins, his voice slow. But the world, my friends, is not always so simple. Sometimes, nature's brushstrokes apart, unexpected. Sometimes, she blurs the very lines we hold most dear. I ask you now to open your minds, to set aside your preconceptions of what is, and what is not. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle over the now silent crowd. The air is thick with anticipation. I present to you now, he continues, a woman of profound grace and gentle spirit, a paradox of nature, a living enigma, Madame Esmeralda, the bearded lady. From the wings, a woman walks to the center of the stage. She is of average height and build, dressed in a modest but well-made velvet gown, the kind a respectable middle-class woman might wear. Her hair is neatly pinned up, and her posture is poised and dignified, and flowing from her chin and upper lip is a thick, lustrous, dark brown beard, at least 6 inches long. The crowd doesn't gasp this time. They are utterly silent. Of all the performers, she is perhaps the most unsettling to the Victorian sensibility. She is a direct challenge to the most fundamental and rigid of all their social categories. The distinction between male and female. Albion was just a very tall man. Princess Tiny was just a very small woman. But Madame Esmeralda, she was both, and neither. She doesn't perform a trick or display a talent. Her act is simply to exist. She sits in a simple wooden chair that has been placed center stage, folds her hands in her lap, and looks out at the audience. Her expression is calm, neutral, perhaps a little sad. She is an object of intense scrutiny, and you can feel the discomfort rippling through the crowd. You can hear a nervous cough, a shuffle of feet. People are fascinated, but they are also profoundly unnerved. The condition that causes excessive hair growth is known as hirsutism, and its causes can be varied and complex. For the women who had it in the 19th century, it was often a source of deep shame and social isolation. The freak show, paradoxically, offered a way out. It was a space where their deformity could be reframed as a wonder and, most importantly, monetized. Many of the most famous bearded ladies of the era became quite wealthy, marrying, having children, and leading lives of relative stability that would have been impossible otherwise. As you watch Madame Esmeralda, You notice a small, seemingly insignificant detail on one of her fingers. She wears a simple, unadorned gold wedding band. This small circle of gold is a powerful statement. It speaks of a private life, of love and domesticity, a world away from this stage. It silently refutes the idea that she is merely a freak. She is a wife, she is a woman, and she has a beard. All these things are true at once. The barker begins his spiel, weaving a tale about a curse or a strange ancestry, but his words seem to fade into the background. The silent, dignified presence of the woman herself is far more powerful. You wonder about her life. What is it like to shave not your legs, but your face, in the morning, or to choose not to? What is it like to walk down the street and feel the burning stare of every stranger? Historians who have studied the lives of these women have found a fascinating spectrum of experiences. Some embraced their unique feature, growing their beards with pride, posing for photographic portraits, and becoming savvy businesswomen. Others found the life of exhibition deeply humiliating and painful. There's no single story, no easy answer. The question of whether this life was empowering or degrading is one that scholars still actively debate. Because the truth is, it was often both at the same time. Your thoughts drift to a quiet moment, away from the show. You imagine her backstage, after the last gawking customer has gone home. You see her sitting not on this hard wooden chair, but in a comfortable, private space. Perhaps she's in a caravan, or a boarding house room. The velvet dress is gone, replaced by a simple housecoat, and she is having a cup of tea. She's subset, the steam warming her face. In this quiet, private moment, the beard is not a spectacle. It is not a curse. It is not a wonder. It is just a part of her, like the color of her eyes or the shape of her hands. In that imagined quiet, you understand the immense contrast of her life. The public humiliation and the private dignity. The person she is forced to be on this stage, and the person she is when no one is looking. The life of a spectacle is a life lived into worlds, and the distance between them is the true measure of her burden and her strength. She looks out at you, her gaze calm and steady, and you feel as though she can see right through your simple curiosity into something deeper. You are the one who feels exposed. Madame Esmeralda gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod to the audience, a gesture of closure rather than a bow, and walks off the stage with the same quiet dignity with which she arrived. The silence she leaves behind is heavy, filled with the audience's unspoken questions and discomfort. The barker, sensing the need to shift the energy, claps his hands together, a sharp, cracking sound that breaks the spell. "A marvel, a true marvel," he exclaims, his voice artificially bright. "But now, prepare yourselves for a bond that defies all explanation. A mystery of biology that has puzzled the greatest minds of our time. Twice the curiosity, twice the wonder, all for the same low price. I give you the Sisters of Siam." He gestures to the curtain, and two figures emerge, walking in perfect, practiced unison. They are young women, perhaps in their late teens or early 20s, with dark hair and pleasant, pretty faces. They are dressed in identical, modest blue gowns, and they are joined at the hip, connected by a thick band of flesh and cartilage. They are conjoined twins. They move to the center of the stage, their steps perfectly synchronized. A lifetime of practice having turned what must be an incredible physical challenge into a fluid, graceful movement. They stand facing the audience, their inner arms wrapped around each other's waists, and they smile. They are a single, startling entity composed of two distinct individuals. The term Siamese twins originated with Changam Dang Bongka, the famous conjoined twins from Siam, now Thailand, who were exhibited by P.T. Barnum in the mid-19th century. They became international superstars, and their fame was so immense that their condition and their country of origin became the colloquial term for all conjoined twins for over a century. It's a striking example of how the language of the sideshow could enter the mainstream vocabulary. The Sisters of Siam on the stage before you are clearly styled after them. The Barker begins to tell their story. A mix of fact and fiction. He speaks of their shared thoughts, their identical dreams, their uncanny ability to know what the other is feeling. It's part of the mythology, the script they are expected to follow. But, as you watch them, you start to notice the subtle differences, the tiny cracks in the facade of perfect unity. One sister smiles a little more brightly than the other. The other sister's gaze seems to wander more, her eyes scanning the faces in the crowd with a restless curiosity, while they stand in a shared posture. You can see one sister tapping her foot almost imperceptibly, a small, private rhythm of impatience or boredom. This is the central, fascinating paradox of their existence. They are presented to the world as a singular we, a unified marvel, but in reality, they are two separate ears, to individual consciousness bound together in the most intimate way imaginable. You can only imagine the incredible psychological complexity of their lives. Every moment, from waking to sleeping, is shared. There is no privacy, no solitude, no action taken without the immediate presence and cooperation of the other. Historians and biographers who have studied the lives of conjoined twins from this era often focus on this tension between their public unity and their private individuality. Chang and Deng Bunker, for example, had famously different personalities. One was quiet and thoughtful. The other was more outgoing and had a fondness for drink. They eventually married to different and unrelated sisters and maintained separate households, spending 3 days at a time in each home. The logistics of this are mind-boggling, a testament to their fierce determination to live as individuals despite their shared body. The Sisters of Siam on the stage begin to perform their act. It's a simple demonstration of their coordination. One plays a small accordion while the other claps a tambourine. The music is simple, a jaunty folk tune, and their timing is flawless. Then, they take a piece of paper and a pair of scissors. One sister holds the paper, while the other cuts out an intricate silhouette of a bird. The crowd is delighted. These are not just passive exhibits. They are talented performers. But you find yourself wondering about the moments the crowd doesn't see. The arguments, the disagreements over what to eat for dinner, or which way to walk down the street. What happens when one wants to read and the other wants to sleep? What happens when one falls in love? You look at their faces again, the smiling one and the watchful one. You imagine them late at night, whispering in the dark, sharing secrets that no one else in the world could ever possibly understand. They are each other's constant companion, and each other's lifelong prison. The question of their quality of life, and whether surgical separation should have been attempted, is a topic of intense ethical and historical debate. In the 19th century, such a procedure would have been almost certainly fatal. So they were left with no choice but to make a life together. Did they resent their bond, or did they find a unique strength in it? Looking at the two young women on stage, moving as one, you suspect the answer is a constant, shifting, and deeply complicated yes to both. They are a team, a partnership born of necessity, and their very existence is a performance of cooperation, both on the stage and off. The Sisters of Siam complete their performance with a synchronized curtsy, their two heads bowing as one. The applause is enthusiastic, a mix of appreciation for their skill and sheer wonder at their existence. They exit, their unified steps carrying them back into the shadows from which they came. The stage is empty again. But not for long. The Barker steps forward, but this time, he does not speak. He simply stands at the side of the stage, his usual boisterous energy replaced by a solemn, almost funereal gravity. The mood in the tent, which had been lightened by the sisters' jaunty tune, becomes heavy once more. The gas lamps seem to hiss a little louder in the sudden, profound silence. The crowd shuffles, their whispers dying down, sensing that this is the moment they have all been waiting for. This is the main event. From the deepest shadows backstage, a figure emerges. It moves with a slow, heavy, shuffling gait. The figure is completely shrouded, from head to toe, in a crude assortment of coverings, A long, dark, shapeless cloak, something like a horse blanket, conceals its body. Its head is covered by a large, coarse burlap sack, with a single, crudely cut slit for the eyes. On top of this hood rests a large, misshapen cap. Its hands are covered in what look like ill-fitting gloves. There is nothing human to see. It is a walking mound of fabric. A formless, silent shape. It is utterly, terrifyingly anonymous. The figure shuffles to the one remaining chair on the stage. A simple, sturdy, high-backed wooden chair placed in the dimmest corner, away from the direct glare of the gaslight. It sits down heavily, a sigh of effort escaping from behind the burlap mask. And then it is still. It does not move. It does not make a sound. It just sits, a silent, shrouded question mark in the gloom. This is the climax of the showman's art. The presentation is everything. By concealing the figure so completely, he is stoking the audience's imagination to a fever pitch. What could possibly be so strange, so different, that it must be hidden in this way? The act of concealment is more powerful than any reveal. It allows the audience to project their own deepest fears and wildest fantasies onto the blank canvas of that shrouded form. You can feel the tension in the tent become almost unbearable. People are leaning forward, craning their necks, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and insatiable curiosity. This is the dark heart of the freak show. It's the promise of seeing the truly forbidden, the thing that is not meant to be seen. This practice of unveiling a performer was a common and highly effective theatrical device. The build-up, the suspense, created a moment of intense psychological drama. It also, in a strange way, dehumanized the performer even further. By the time the reveal came, the audience was not prepared to see a person. They were prepared to see a monster, a creature, and it. Even the name of this final exhibit, which the Barker has not yet spoken, was part of the artifice. Names like the what is it, the missing link, or the thing were common. They were designed to strip away all humanity and replace it with the label of pure, unadulterated otherness. Historians continue to debate the psychological impact this had on the performers themselves. To hear yourself introduced, night after night, not with a name but with a question or a negation, must have been profoundly damaging to one's sense of self. You find yourself holding your breath. You look at the silent, hooded figure. You can just make out the glint of an eye through the slit in the burlap. It's a human eye, and you get the distinct, chilling impression that the eye is looking directly at you. In that moment, the roles are reversed. You are the one being observed. The spectacle is watching its audience. The Barker finally steps forward into the pool of light, his face a mask of solemnity. He lets the silence stretch for another few seconds. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says, his voice barely above a whisper, making everyone strain to hear, "you have been patient. You have seen wonders tonight that will surely populate your dreams. But what you are about to witness, what you are about to behold, is a sight that will be seared into your memory for all your days." He takes a dramatic pause. "Some say he is a beast," he whispers. "Some say he is a man. Science has no name for him. The church has no blessing for him. He is the terrible and the tragic, innocent man." The name hangs in the air, a shocking, evocative, and deeply cruel label. The Barker takes a step towards the seated figure, his hand outstretched, as if to pull away the hood. The crowd leans in. The show is about to reach its terrible and tragic conclusion. Just as the Barker's hand is about to touch the burlap hood, a voice cuts through the tense silence. It's a new voice, sharp and authoritative, coming from the back of the tent. "Stop. I forbid you to do this." Every head in the tent swivels around. Standing near the entrance flap, which is held open by an unseen hand, is a gentleman. He is impeccably dressed in a dark, tailored suit, a stark contrast to the rougher attire of the general crowd. He holds a leather satchel in one hand and a black top hat in the other. His face is clean-shaven, with a look of intense, intelligent focus. There is an air of authority about him, the kind that comes from education and social standing. The Barker freezes, his hand hovering in mid-air. He turns, his face a mixture of surprise and annoyance. "And who, sir, might you be, to come into my establishment and give orders?" he asks, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "My name is Frederick Treves," the man says, his voice calm but firm, projecting easily through the tent. "I am a surgeon at the London hospital, just down the road, and I have heard rumors of this exhibition." A murmur runs through the crowd. "Aye, doctor." This adds a completely unexpected layer of drama to the proceedings. The world of science is about to collide with the world of spectacle. Dr. Frederick Treves was a real and highly respected surgeon of the era, known for his ambition and his keen interest in anatomy. His discovery of Joseph Merrick is a pivotal moment in this story, a point where the narrative shifts from the commercial world of the freak show to the clinical world of medicine. The Barker, whose name is Tom Norman, a famous showman at the time, recovers quickly. He is not easily intimidated. "Hey, doctor. You, sir. Excellent. Then you, sir, of all people, should appreciate this unique specimen. A marvel of pathology. Perhaps you'd care for a closer look. For a shilling, of course. Professional courtesy." He gives a greasy smile. Dr. Treves ignores the jibe. He takes a few steps forward, his eyes fixed on the shrouded figure in the chair. "That specimen, as you call him, is a man, and exhibiting him in this fashion, for the morbid curiosity of the public, is an affront to decency. This is not an educational forum. It is a degradation." The tension between these two men is palpable. It's a clash of two different worlds, two different ways of seeing. For Tom Norman, the showman, Joseph Merrick is a commodity, a source of income. His value lies in his strangeness, his ability to shock and awe. For Dr. Treves, the man of science, Merrick is a patient, a medical puzzle. His value lies in his pathology, his ability to be studied and understood. It's a fascinating and troubling question which of these two views is actually more humane. The academic debate on this very point continues. Was Treves a savior who rescued Merrick from exploitation, or was he just a different kind of exploiter, trading a public cage for a medical one? The crowd is captivated by this real-life drama. This is better than any staged performance. The Barker, Tom Norman, senses he is losing control of the narrative. "Degradation, is it?" Norman says, his voice rising in indignation. He gestures around the tent. "Look at these people, doctor. They work in factories, in sweatshops, in the mud of the river. Their lives are hard and grey. I provide them with a little wonder, a little escape. And as for him," he points to the seated figure, "what other life is there for him? Would your society welcome him? Would your hospitals house him indefinitely? I provide him with a living. I give him shelter and food. I protect him. You see a degradation. I see a practical arrangement." Norman's argument is a powerful one, and it reflects a common justification used by showmen of the era. They often portrayed themselves as benevolent protectors of their performers, who would otherwise be destitute or locked away in asylums. There was a kernel of truth to this, which makes the ethics of the situation so profoundly murky. Dr. Treves takes another step forward. His voice is quieter now, but more intense. "I wish to examine him, in private, not as a spectacle, but as a patient." "Impossible," Norman scoffs. "The show is not over. These good people have paid their penny." "I will pay you for your trouble," Treves says, reaching into his coat. "I will pay for his time. Let us say 5 shillings. You can see the calculation in Norman's eyes. 5 shillings is a significant sum, more than he would make from the rest of this audience combined. The businessman in him is at war with the showman. He glances at the silent, hooded figure, then back at the doctor. The figure in the chair has not moved, has not made a sound. He is the prize in a tug-of-war between two powerful men, his own voice completely absent from the negotiation over his fate. After a long, tense moment, Norman gives a curt nod. "All right, doctor, you may have your private examination after the show, behind the curtain." He then turns back to the audience, his showman smile snapping back into place. "Apologies for the interruption. Ladies and gentlemen, a scientific consultation. As you can see, the Elephant Man is a subject of great interest to even the most learned men in our great city." He has masterfully spun the interruption to his advantage, framing it as a validation of his exhibit's importance. Dr. Treves, looking frustrated but having achieved his primary goal, retreats to the back of the tent to wait. The barker turns back to the chair. The moment of revelation, delayed but now infused with a new layer of scientific legitimacy, is at hand. The barker, Tom Norman, savors the heightened drama. The doctor's interruption has only whetted the crowd's appetite. With a grand, theatrical flourish, he reaches for the burn-up hood. "And now," he intones, his voice dropping back into a dramatic whisper, "the moment you have awaited. Feast your eyes, but guard your hearts." He pulls the hood off. For a moment, there is a stunned, absolute silence in the tent. The collective intake of breath is a soft, rushing sound, like a dying wind. What is revealed beneath the sack is not a monster. It is a human head, but one of startling and profound deformity. The man's cranium is immense, misshapen, with large, lumpy masses of bone and skin distorting its shape. One of his arms is as large and shapeless as a club, while the other, his left arm, is surprisingly slender and elegant. A gentleman's arm, folds of rough, cauliflower-like skin hang from his back and chest, giving his body a strange, uneven texture. His mouth is obscured by a bony protrusion from his upper jaw, making speech almost impossible. But it is his eyes that command your attention. Beneath the heavy, deformed brow, his eyes are clear, intelligent, and full of a deep and fathomless sadness. They are the eyes of a gentle and sensitive soul looking out from behind the bars of a cruel and bewildering prison. In those eyes, you see not a monster, not a specimen, but a man named Joseph Merrick. The story of Joseph Carey Merrick is one of the most well-documented, yet still debated, narratives of the Victorian freak show era. Born in Leicester in 1862, his physical deformities began to develop in early childhood. For years, the cause was a mystery, often attributed to a popular but medically baseless theory that his mother had been frightened by an elephant during her pregnancy. It was only in the late 20th century that medical researchers, through DNA analysis of his skeleton, concluded that Merrick likely suffered from two conditions simultaneously: a very severe case of neurofibromatosis type I, which affects skin and bone, and more controversially, Proteus syndrome, a rare overgrowth disorder. The diagnosis is still a subject of some academic discussion, a final medical puzzle that Merrick presents to the world. The crowd, after its initial shock silence, begins to react. You hear a woman's nervous sob. Someone else lets out a short, sharp laugh of disbelief. A man near you whispers, "Good God," a phrase that is both a curse and a prayer. This is the raw, unfiltered reaction the showman sells. It is a potent cocktail of pity, fear, and a strange, guilty relief that this fate is not your own. Joseph sits perfectly still, enduring the wave of shock and revulsion. He must be used to it. He has learned to retreat to a place deep inside himself, a place where the stares and the whispers cannot reach him. He keeps his gaze lowered, fixed on his own lap, on his one perfect hand which rests there. A stark contrast to the rest of his body, the barker begins his practiced narration, pointing out the various deformities with the tip of his cane, giving them crude, evocative names. The valley in the back of his head, large enough to hold a basin of water, the trunk-like appendage of his face, from which he gets his terrible name. The speech is brutal, a clinical and commercial catalogue of another human being suffering, but your attention is no longer on the barker. It is on Joseph. You imagine what it must be like to be him, to wake up every morning in this body, to feel the weight of it, the pain of it, to know that your every public appearance will be met with screams or stares, to have your deepest, most personal pain turned into a cheap theatrical spectacle, night after night. And yet, there is an undeniable dignity about him. It's in his stillness, his quiet refusal to engage with the degradation of the moment. He is not performing, he is simply enduring. He is a man who has learned to survive in the only way available to him, by selling the very thing that has caused him so much pain. You look over at Treves, who is watching from the back of the tent. His face is a mask of clinical focus, but you can see a flicker of something else in his eyes. As a pretty, scientific excitement, it's hard to tell. He is looking at Joseph not as a freak but as a puzzle. An unprecedented case for the annals of medicine. The unveiling is complete. The secret is out. But the mystery of the man himself, the person behind the eyes, has only deepened. The audience has seen his body, but they have no idea of the person trapped within it. They don't know that this man, who can barely speak, is intelligent, sensitive, and has a deep appreciation for beauty. They see only the surface, the elephant, and that is the true tragedy of the scene. You have seen the spectacle, and now you can unsee it. But you feel an overwhelming urge to know the man. The real Joseph Merrick, who remains hidden in plain sight. The show concludes. The barker gives his final, florid speech, and the crowd begins to shuffle out of the tent, their faces a mixture of awe, disgust, and quiet contemplation. They leave in a hush, the usual post-show chatter absent. They have seen something that has silenced them. You linger, as does Treves, watching the last of the audience disappear through the canvas flap, returning to the foggy London night, forever changed by what they have witnessed. When the tent is empty, save for the performers and staff, the atmosphere changes instantly. The theatrical tension dissolves, replaced by a mundane, weary sense of a workday ending. The ticket taker begins to count the day's earnings. The clink of copper coins is sharp, business-like sound. Albion the giant emerges from the back. No longer a colossus but just a tired, pained man, and he begins to help douse some of the gas lamps. Dr. Treves steps forward, his satchel in hand, and approaches the barker, Tom Norman. They exchange a few quiet words, and Norman, with a shrug of his shoulders, gestures towards Joseph, who is still sitting in his chair in the corner of the stage. The deal is done. Norman has his money, and Treves has his patient. Treves approaches the stage. He moves with a gentle, professional calm, his demeanor very different from the prying, morbid curiosity of the crowd. "Mr. Merrick," he says, his voice soft and respectful. It's the first time you have heard anyone address Joseph with a formal honorific. It's a small but profound act of recognition. Joseph looks up, his one clear eye meeting the doctor's. He gives a slow, hesitant nod. "My name is Treves," the surgeon continues. "I would like to, if you would permit it, examine you. Not here, at the hospital. It would be a great service to medical science." Joseph makes a sound, a guttural, indistinct noise from behind his deformed jaw. It is the sound of a man struggling to make his voice work. He raises his one good hand and makes a small gesture, a motion that seems to indicate agreement. The journey from the freak show to the hospital is a strange and clandestine one. To avoid the stares of the public, it must be done at night. Dr. Treves arranges for a car, one with drawn curtains, to be brought to the back of the tent. A special, oversized coat and a different kind of concealing headwear, a cap with a dark veil that hangs down, less shocking than the burlap sack, are produced for Joseph. You follow them through the labyrinthine backstage area, a world of ropes, crates, And shadows. You see Princess Tiny, out of her regal costume now and in a simple dress, giving Joseph a quiet, supportive pat on his good arm as he passes. You see Madame Esmeralda offer him a cup of water, which he struggles to drink. In this private, hidden world, there is a clear sense of community, of a shared, unspoken understanding. They are a family of outcasts, and they look out for one another. Once inside the cab, the journey is short and silent. You watch the gaslights of Whitechapel Street past the curtained window, and then you arrive at the London Hospital, a vast, imposing brick building, a temple of science and reason in the heart of the city's poorest district. Dr. Treves leads Joseph through a back entrance, down quiet, echoing corridors, to a private examination room. Here, away from the sawdust in the gaslight, the world is clean, quiet, and smells of antiseptic. It is a world of white tiles, gleaming medical instruments, and cold, objective observation. In the privacy of this room, Treves conducts his examination. Joseph endures it with the same stoic patience he displayed on the stage. He is measured, prodded, and documented. But then, as the formal examination concludes, something remarkable happens. Treves, seeing that Joseph is exhausted, indicates for him to rest on a cot in the corner of the room. He leaves for a moment and returns with a tray of tea and some simple biscuits. He sits not as a doctor to a patient, but as one man with another. He does not ask probing questions. He simply sits in companionable silence. Joseph, perhaps feeling a sense of safety and respect he has rarely known, reaches into a deep inner pocket of his coat. He pulls out a small, folded bundle of paper. With his one good hand, he carefully unfolds it. It is a half-finished, incredibly intricate paper model of a church. It is a perfect, miniature replica of St. Philip's Cathedral, a church Joseph could see from his window during a previous, brief stay at a workhouse. The model is astonishingly delicate and precise. Tiny paper buttresses, intricate windows, a perfectly rendered steeple. To create something so beautiful and detailed with only one good hand is a feat of immense skill and patience. Dr. Treves stares at the model, speechless. This is the first true glimpse into the soul of Joseph Merrick. This is the man behind the deformities. He is not a monster. He is not a specimen. He is an artist. A man who, in his silent, isolated world, creates beauty. This quiet, private hobby is one of the most poignant and well-documented facts of Merrick's life. He would spend countless hours building these models, a way of ordering his world and expressing a creativity that had no other outlet. It stands in the most profound contrast to the public spectacle of his life, a testament to the gentle, artistic, and deeply human spirit that lived within his tortured frame. He couldn't build a normal life, so he built cathedrals. The sight of the delicate paper church, resting in the palm of a man the world has labeled a monster, leaves a profound impact on Treves. It is a key turning in the lock of his understanding. He begins to see Joseph not just as a medical curiosity, but as a man of sensitivity and intelligence. This encounter marks the beginning of a complex and lifelong relationship between the two men. But Joseph cannot stay at the hospital indefinitely. He is not sick in a way Treves can cure, and the hospital governors are uneasy about housing a curiosity. So, after a few days, Joseph must return to the world of the showman. His journey, however, is about to take another unexpected turn, one that will carry him across an ocean. The world of the Victorian freak show was a surprisingly international one. Performers and showmen were constantly crossing the Atlantic, seeking new audiences and fresh fortunes, and there was one legendary figure, who dominated this world like no other. From across the sea, you can almost feel his arrival before you see him. There's a shift in the air, a new kind of energy crackling through the grimy streets of London. It's the energy of pure, unadulterated hype. The great American impresario, Phineas Taylor Barnum, has come to town. P.T. Barnum was more than just a showman. He was a revolutionary marketer, a cultural phenomenon, and arguably one of the inventors of modern pop culture. He didn't just run a circus or a museum. He created a universe of wonders, a place where the line between reality and delusion was not just blurred, but joyfully obliterated. You find yourself standing outside the Egyptian Hall in Piccadilly, one of London's most fashionable exhibition spaces, which Barnum has temporarily commandeered. The building itself is draped in enormous, colourful banners, even more garish and spectacular than the ones you saw at the small side street show. Posters plaster every available surface, printed with bold, declarative typefaces that scream for your attention. They advertise Barnum's Great American Museum, a traveling version of his famous New York City establishment. The man himself makes a grand entrance, stepping out of a fine carriage. He is not the slightly desperate, velvet waist-coated barker you saw before. Barnum is a portly, prosperous-looking man in his 60s, with a broad, friendly face, a fringe of white hair, and eyes that twinkle with a shrewd, calculating intelligence. He is dressed in the finest clothes, a vision of respectable, capitalist success. He radiates an aura of boundless optimism and audacious confidence. He doesn't just believe in his product, he is his product. Barnum's genius was in understanding the psychology of the crowd. He knew that people didn't just want to see something strange, they wanted to be part of a story, an event. He created sensations. When he exhibited the diminutive Charles Stratton as General Tom Thumb, he didn't just put him on a stage. He arranged for him to meet Queen Victoria, creating a massive press frenzy. He understood the power of celebrity and the magic of a good headline. You watch as he addresses a crowd of journalists who have gathered to meet him. His voice is booming, cheerful, and full of a quintessentially American brand of charming exaggeration. "My dear gentlemen of the press," he exclaims, "London is a magnificent city, but I have found it to be a trifle too quiet, a little too grey. I am here to inject a dose of good, old-fashioned American spectacle, to astonish, to amuse, to edify, and yes, to bamboozle, for a little bamboozling is good for the soul." This is the heart of his philosophy. He didn't see himself as a con man, but as an entertainer who made the audience part of the game. He famously said, "There's a sucker born every minute," a quote that is almost certainly apocryphal and one he himself denied saying. The actual origin of the quote is a subject of endless debate among historians and biographers. A more accurate reflection of his view was that the public enjoyed being fooled, as long as they were getting good value for their money. Barnum's museum wasn't just a freak show. It was a vast and chaotic collection of everything imaginable: natural history exhibits, wax figures, theatrical performances, and yes, a gallery of human curiosities. But he presented them differently. He gave them a sheen of scientific legitimacy and educational value, even when it was entirely fabricated. As Barnum holds court, you see a familiar figure lurking at the edge of the press scrum. It's Tom Norman, the bulker, looking small and insignificant next to the grand American showman. He is here, like dozens of other small-time operators, to try and catch the great man's eye, perhaps to sell an act, or even a performer. The news of a unique curiosity like the Elephant Man would certainly have reached Barnum's ears. The world of showmen was a tight-knit, competitive, and gossipy community. Barnum represents a new, more corporate and professional era of the spectacle. He is turning the humble, street corner freak show into a global entertainment industry. And for the performers, this had a complex effect. On one hand, being part of Barnum's show meant better pay, better living conditions, and a level of fame that was unimaginable before. On the other, it meant being part of an even bigger, more relentless machine. Your life story owned and copyrighted by the Barnum brand. You were no longer just a marvel. You were a piece of intellectual property. The arrival of this great impresario signals a change in the wind, a change that will sweep up Joseph Merrick and carry him into a whole new world of spectacle and exploitation. You follow the buzz and energy surrounding Barnum, sipping into the grand Egyptian hall behind the throng of journalists and curious onlookers. Inside, it's a world away from the damp, sawdust-floored tent you first entered. This is spectacle on an industrial scale. The hall is vast, brightly lit with hundreds of gas jets, and every inch of space is filled with exhibits, displays, and noisy, chattering crowds. It's a dizzying assault on the senses. In one corner, there's a collection of exotic, taxidermied animals. In another, a glass case contains what is purported to be the fossilized remains of a giant. A lecturer with a pointer is giving a dramatic, pseudo-scientific talk about the wonders of the natural world to a captivated audience. The air hums with a palpable sense of excitement and wonder. This isn't a shameful baccalaureate. This is mainstream, family-friendly entertainment. At the center of it all is P.T. Barnum, orchestrating the chaos with the practiced ease of a master conductor. You watch him as he guides the tour, his voice booming over the din. He stops in front of a particularly strange exhibit. The upper half of a monkey, crudely stitched to the lower half of a large fish. It is grotesque, and obviously fake. And here, gentlemen, Barnum announces with a perfectly straight face, is the world-famous Fiji mermaid, a creature of myth, a wonder of the deep, captured at great expense and peril by our brave explorers. A journalist next to you scoffs audibly. That's a fabrication. Barnum. It's plain as day. Barnum turns to the journalist and winks. A big, conspiratorial gesture. My dear boy, he says, his voice dropping so only those nearby can hear. Of course it is. But is it not a magnificent fabrication? Does it not spark the imagination? Does it not make you wonder, just for a second, what if? That, my friend, is the art of the humbug. This is the core of Barnum's philosophy. The concept of the humbug. It wasn't about simple lying. It was about creating a puzzle for the public. He would present an exhibit with a grand, unbelievable story, and then actively encourage the public and the press to debate its authenticity. He would even publish anonymous letters in the newspaper arguing against his own exhibits. The controversy itself was the attraction. Whether the Fiji mermaid was real or fake was beside the point. The point was that everyone was talking about it, and everyone was buying a ticket to see for themselves. The term humbug itself has a fuzzy origin, which seems fitting. Linguists and historians are not entirely sure where it came from, but it rose to prominence in the mid-19th century to describe a particular kind of grand, theatrical deception. Barnum didn't invent the word, but he perfected the art form and made it his personal brand. You wander through the exhibition hall, marveling at the sheer audacity of it all. You see a genuine woolly horse, which is just a regular horse with a genetic anomaly causing unusually long hair. You see a demonstration of a perpetual motion machine that is clearly being powered by a hidden source. It's a game, and everyone in the room, from the most cynical journalist to the most wide-eyed child, is a willing player. Barnum's genius was in realizing that people in this new, scientific, and increasingly rational age still had a deep-seated craving for mystery and magic. The world was being measured, categorized, and explained. The freak show, in Barnum's hands, was a reaction against that. It was a place where the rules of nature were suspended, where the impossible could be true, if only for an afternoon. Then, your eyes are drawn to a quieter corner of the hall. Here, on a raised platform, are the living curiosities. They are presented in a much grander fashion than in Tom Norman's tent. They sit on ornate chairs, in front of lush velvet backdrops, with professionally printed signs detailing their stories. You see a pair of albino siblings, billed as the children of the night. You see a man with his pterodactyl Y, his hands and feet split down the middle, who is presented as the lobster boy. The presentation is slicker, more professional, but the core transaction is the same. You are paying to stare at people with congenital differences. Barnum, however, has added his signature humbug twist. He often mixed genuine human oddities with what he called made freaks, people who were cleverly costumed or made up. This further blurred the line between what was real and what was performance, making the entire experience a puzzle for the audience to solve. Was the man with the alligator skin real? Was the Circassian beauty, with her wild, frizzy hair, really from a lost Caucasian tribe, or was she just a local girl with a clever hairstyle? Guessing was part of the fun. It is into this world, this grand, commercialized, and morally ambiguous universe of the humbug, that Joseph Merrick is about to be drawn. His condition is no humbug. It is brutally, painfully real, and in a world of magnificent fakes. His authenticity makes him the most valuable commodity of all. You can see how, to a man like Barnum, Merrick represents the ultimate attraction. The one thing that needs no exaggeration, no clever backstory. He is a spectacle in his purest, most unadulterated form, and Barnum knows exactly how to sell that. In the chaotic, swirling world of P.T. Barnum, deals are struck not in quiet offices, but in the bustling corners of his exhibition halls, or over noisy dinners in lavish hotels. You find yourself an unseen observer in a private, with tunneled room, away from the public floor. The air is thick with cigar smoke. Here, the business behind the spectacle is conducted. Tom Norman, the small-time English showman, is here, looking nervous and out of his depth. He is negotiating with one of Barnum's formidable agents, a sharp man in a pinstripe suit with eyes that seem to appraise everything and everyone in terms of profit and loss, and the subject of their negotiation, of course, is Joseph Merrick. Barnum himself is not one to get his hands dirty with the initial contract. He has an army of managers, agents, and lawyers for that. This professionalization of the business was one of his key innovations. It transformed the industry from a series of informal, handshake agreements into a structured, legally binding enterprise. The agent slides a piece of paper across the polished table towards Norman. It's a contract. Mr. Barnum is prepared to take the act on a European tour. The agent says, his voice flat and businesslike. Brussels, Paris, Berlin. The continent is hungry for novelty. We will provide transportation, lodging, and a generous weekly stipend. All you need to do is sign over the management rights. Norman picks up the contract, his brow furrowed in concentration. You can almost see the gears turning in his head. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. A chance to elevate himself from the grimy side streets of London to the grand stages of Europe, all on the coattails of the great Barnum. But what about the person at the heart of this deal? A few days later, you are a silent witness to a much quieter and far more significant signing. Joseph Merrick is brought to a small, airless office. He is not being asked to sign a partnership agreement, but a performance contract. The document is long, filled with dense, legalistic language that is difficult to pass. Joseph sits at the desk, the contract laid out before him. Tom Norman stands behind him, a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that is meant to be encouraging but feels proprietary. It's a good deal, Joseph, Norman says. Security, a roof over your head. You won't have to worry about a thing. Joseph looks down at the paper. Can't he even read it? Historical accounts of Merrick's literacy are varied. He was certainly intelligent and could read simple texts. But a complex legal document like this would have been a challenge for anyone without a formal education. This imbalance of power was typical. The performers, often uneducated and with few other options, were at a significant disadvantage when it came to negotiating their own terms. He is handed a pen. He takes it in his one good hand, his left hand, the slender, elegant hand of an artist. He looks at the line at the bottom of the page, where his name is supposed to go. These contracts were notoriously one-sided. They often bound the performer to a showman for years, sometimes for life. They would dictate where the performer could live, who they could associate with, and even whether they could marry. The contract might promise a weekly wage, but then deduct exorbitant amounts for expenses, food, lodging, costumes, and 100 other trumped-up charges, leaving the performer with very little. Some contracts even included clauses that allowed the showman to lease or sell the performer's contract to another manager, treating the human being as a piece of transferable property. Scholars who have studied these surviving documents are often shocked by their exploitative nature. They were tools of control, designed to ensure that the showman retained all the power and the majority of the profit. The question of how much the performers understood what they were signing is a painful one. Did they know the full extent of the rights they were signing away? Or was the promise of a steady wage and a place in the world, however strange, enough to make them sign anything? You watch Joseph's hand hover over the paper. What is he thinking? Is he thinking about the security Norman promised? Or is he thinking about the jeering crowds, the endless travel, the life of being a perpetual spectacle? Does he feel like he is signing a ticket to a better life, or a life sentence? He dips the pen in the inkwell. With slow, careful strokes, he signs his name, Joseph Merrick. His handwriting is surprisingly neat, a testament to the dexterity of his one good hand. The ink is black and final on the page. With that simple act, his life is no longer his own. He is now, legally and formally, an employee of the vast and relentless entertainment machine. He has traded his autonomy for a fragile kind of safety. The agent snatches the paper up, blows on the ink to dry it, and folds it neatly. "Excellent," he says, with a thin smile. "The tour begins next week. The deal is done. Joseph Merrick, the man who built cathedrals out of paper, has just been sold." With the contract signed, the machinery of the spectacle kicks into high gear. Joseph Merrick is no longer just a man with a medical condition. He is a product to be packaged and sold, and every product needs a story. The reality of his life, a difficult childhood in an English industrial town, years spent in a workhouse, is too mundane, too depressing. The audience doesn't pay for gritty realism. They pay for exotic fantasy. You find yourself in a crowded, noisy pub, the kind of place where stories are bought, sold, and embellished. Tom Norman is sitting with a grubby, ink-stained man, a writer for the cheap pamphlets and sensationalist posters that serve as the show's main advertising. They are, quite literally, inventing a biography for Joseph. "We need something with flair," the writer says, taking a long drink from his pint of ale. "Man with a strange head from Leicester isn't going to sell tickets in Brussels." "We've been using the Elephant Man angle," Norman says. "The story about his mother being frightened by an elephant at the fair. It works well enough. It's a start." The writer concedes, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "But it's not grand enough. We need adventure, mystery, a touch of the savage." This process of manufacturing a backstory was a cornerstone of the freak show business. The performer's real history was erased and replaced with a gaff or a pitch card, a small, printed biography that was sold to the audience for a few extra pennies. These stories were often wildly fantastical, drawing on the era's fascination with exploration, colonialism, and pseudoscience. For example, performers with microcephaly, a condition resulting in a small head, were often billed as missing minks discovered in the jungles of Africa. People with vitiligo, a skin condition causing patches of depigmentation, were presented as having been miraculously struck by lightning, or as members of a lost, piebald race from a remote island. These stories served a dual purpose. They made the performer seem more exotic and therefore more valuable, and they also placed a safe distance between the performer and the audience, reinforcing their otherness. The writer takes out a small, dog-eared notebook. What if he wasn't from Leicester at all? He muses, his eyes gleaming with inspiration. What if he were the sign of a lost, ancient tribe, discovered in the deepest, darkest jungles of India, perhaps, a tribe that worshipped the elephant god, Ganesha. He's not a medical anomaly. He's a religious icon, a holy monster. Norman's eyes light up. "I like it," It's got romance and tragedy, the writer adds. He was cast out by his people, forced to wander the earth, a lonely god in a world that doesn't understand him. He speaks a lost language, a series of mournful clicks and groans. It is a chillingly cynical process to witness. They are taking a real man's life, with all its genuine pain and suffering, and turning it into a cheap, sensationalist narrative. Joseph's inability to speak clearly is not a symptom of his physical condition. It's a feature of his exotic, fictional past. His deformities are not a medical tragedy. They are the sign of his divine, yet monstrous, status. The historical accuracy of these backstories is still a subject of much debate and research. It's incredibly difficult to untangle the truth from the fiction, as the performers themselves were often forced to learn and recite their fabricated histories as part of their act. After years of telling the same story, night after night, did they begin to believe it themselves? Did the fictional personas start to merge with their own sense of self? It's a profound psychological question with no easy answer. The final product of this pub room brainstorming session is a lurid poster. A few days later, you see it plastered on a wall. An artist has rendered a terrifying, monstrous version of Joseph, making him look more animal than human. He is depicted in a jungle setting, with a temple in the background. The text, in huge, dramatic letters, proclaims BARNUM SLATSTSCNSATION GINESH TAGS ACRED APHANTM ANOFINDIO Tough men, elf beast, all wonder. The poster bears no resemblance to the quiet, gentle man who builds paper churches. It is a lie, a complete and total fabrication designed to sell tickets. And it works. The public is captivated by the story. They line up, eager to see the sacred monster for themselves. You see Joseph just before he is about to go on stage for the first time on the European tour. He is in his dressing room, a small, drafty space behind the stage. He is wearing a new, exotic-looking costume, a sort of turban and a silk robe, designed to match his new identity. He looks uncomfortable, lost. He catches his reflection in a small, cracked mirror. You wonder who he sees. Does he see Joseph Merrick from Leicester? Or is he starting to see Gianisha, the monster from the jungle? The show is about to begin, and his old life, the last vestiges of his true identity, are about to be erased for good, replaced by a fiction he never wrote, but is now forced to inhabit. The grand European tour begins, and with it, a new and grueling chapter of life unfolds. You are no longer in a fixed location, but in a state of constant, jarring motion. The world becomes a blur of train stations, cheap lodging houses, and drafty exhibition halls, all connected by the relentless rhythm of the rails. You are in a third-class railway carriage, rattling and swaying its way across the Belgian countryside. The air is stale and thick with the smoke from the engine. Joseph is sitting on a hard wooden bench, his large, coat form drawing subtle, fearful glances from the other passengers. He is wedged into a corner, trying to make himself as small as possible, an impossible task for a man of his size and shape. He stares out the window, but the view is just a smudge of green and grey fields rushing by. This is the unglamorous reality of life on the road for a travelling show. While top-billed stars might enjoy comfortable, private transport, the human curiosities were oft unshunted into the cheapest, most crowded carriages. The travel was exhausting, physically demanding, and deeply alienating. You are always a stranger, always in transit, never at home. The caravan of performers is a strange and motley crew. There is a family of acrobats who keep to themselves, speaking a language you don't recognize. There is a fire eater with a perpetually scorched mustache and a hacking cough. There is a young woman who performs as a snake charmer, her wicker basket of non-venomous snakes resting on the seat beside her. They are a patchwork of humanity, thrown together by the bizarre gravity of the entertainment business. upon arriving in a new city, Brussels, for example. The routine is always the same. They are herded off the train and taken not to a comfortable hotel, but to a cheap, grim boarding house in the seediest part of town. The rooms are small, the beds are lumpy, and the food is monotonous. There is no comfort, no privacy, just a temporary place to store their bodies between shows. One of the strangest and least discussed aspects of this itinerant life was the sheer logistical challenge of it all. Imagine trying to navigate a foreign city when you look like Joseph Merrick. You can't simply walk down the street to a cafe or a park. Every public appearance is a spectacle, risking mobbing, ridicule, or the unwanted attention of the police. The performers were often virtual prisoners in their lodgings, only leaving to be shuttled to and from the exhibition hall. This isolation was a profound and constant feature of their lives. You watched Joseph in his small, barren room. There is a lumpy mattress on the floor, as no regular bed can accommodate his sleeping needs. He has to sleep sitting up, his heavy head resting on his knees. To avoid the risk of asphyxiation, his only personal possession is the small valise containing his paper modeling kit. In the few quiet hours between the exhaustion of travel and the humiliation of the show, he takes it out. With his one good hand, he carefully begins to construct a new model, this time of the grand cathedral he glimpsed from the train station. It is his only anchor, his only piece of private, creative sanity in a world of constant chaos and public display. The shows themselves are relentless. 2, sometimes 3 performances a day. The routine is the same, but the faces in the crowd always new. A sea of anonymous, staring eyes, French eyes, German eyes, Dutch eyes. They may not understand the English barker's pitch, but the language of staring is universal. Joseph is brought on stage, unveiled, and subjected to the same gasps of horror and pity, translated into a dozen different languages. There is a constant, weary tension among the performers. They are exhausted, poorly paid, and often at odds with the show's managers over food, play, or conditions. Small squabbles can erupt into bitter arguments. The snake charmer accuses the fire eater of stealing her share of the extra pennies earned from selling pitch cards. The manager threatens to dock everyone's pay for a lackluster performance. Historians who study the social dynamics of these traveling shows often describe them as high-pressure, dysfunctional families. There were fierce loyalties and deep-seated resentments, all forged in the crucible of shared hardship and exploitation. They were all in the same leaky boat, but that didn't stop them from fighting over the last dry spot. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, you see Joseph sitting alone in the common room of the boarding house. The fire eater, a man named Marco, comes in. He doesn't say a word. He simply walks over to the small, smoky fireplace, pokes the embers, and manages to coax a small flame back to life. He then sits down, not too close to Joseph, but not too far away either. The two men sit in silence for a long time, sharing this small circle of warmth. It is a moment of quiet, unspoken solidarity. They are two completely different men, with two completely different acts. But they are bound by the same life. They are both selling a piece of themselves for a living, and they both understand, without needing to say a word, the profound cost of that transaction. The road is long, and the only comfort they have is each other. The train rattles on, carrying the show from one anonymous city to the next. The initial novelty of the European tour has long since worn off, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. For you, as an observer, the experience is draining. For the performers living it, it is a form of slow erosion, a grinding down of the human spirit. You are in a packed exhibition hall in Paris. The air is even thicker than in London. A perfumed fog of expensive cigars, ladies, floral scents, and the ever-present smell of unwashed bodies. The Parisian crowd is different, more vocal, more openly critical. A mix of fashionable high society seeking a thrill and the rowdy working class looking for a spectacle. They don't just stare. They comment. They point. They laugh. Joseph is on stage. The barker is going through his fabricated G and Nisha's story, but the French audience, a little more worldly, seems less convinced. They are here for the raw visual, the unadorned shock. As Joseph is unveiled, the reaction is a wave of sound, exclamations of mon Dieu, nervous laughter, and sharp, analytical comments about his anatomy. You focus not on Joseph, but on the crowd. You begin to analyze the act of staring, the psychology of the gaze. What is it that these people are seeing, and what does it mean to them? For the Victorians, looking was not a passive activity. It was a way of gathering information, of categorizing the world. In an age of burgeoning science and anthropology, the public was being trained to observe, classify, and judge. They would visit zoos to look at exotic animals, museums to look at artifacts from distant cultures, and freak shows to look at people who deviated from the norm. In all these cases, the act of looking reinforced a sense of their own normalcy, their own superiority. By looking at the freak, the savage, or the animal, the Victorian middle-class viewer affirmed their own identity as a civilized, unnormal human being. You watch a well-dressed man in the front row. He has taken out a pair of opera glasses and is examining Joseph's features with the detached, clinical curiosity of a biologist studying an insect. He is not seeing a man. He is seeing a collection of symptoms, a biological puzzle. He is performing his own amateur diagnosis, feeling intelligent and modern as he does so. Nearby, a group of young, Bohemian art students are sketching furiously in their notebooks. For them, Joseph is an object of aesthetic interest, a living example of the grotesque. They are not interested in his humanity, but in his form, his texture, his sheer visual strangeness. He is an inspiration for their dark, romantic art. And then there is the raw, visceral reaction of the majority. The fear, the pity, the morbid fascination. This is a more ancient, more primal kind of looking. It's the instinct to slow down and look at an accident. The deep-seated human need to confront the horrific from a safe distance. The stage, the gaslights, the velvet trope. They all create that safety. They turn a suffering human being into a theatrical event, a contained and manageable horror. The psychological toll is constant. Relentless objectification took on the performers is almost impossible to calculate. Imagine every time you stepped out your door, you were met with hundreds, thousands of eyes, all staring at you with the same intense, probing mixture of fear and fascination. Your body is not your own private vessel. It is public property, a landmark for others to gaze upon. There's a small, poignant detail that historians have uncovered about the lives of some of these performers. Many of them, in their private quarters, would surround themselves with perfectly ordinary, mass-produced objects and images, cheap prints of pastoral landscapes, portraits of the royal family, simple ceramic figurines. It is believed that this was a way for them to surround themselves with images of the normal world they were excluded from, a way to visually and psychologically counteract the constant emphasis on their own abnormality. It was a small act of rebellion against the tyranny of the public gaze. Joseph, on stage, has retreated into himself. He has perfected the art of being present physically but absent mentally. He has built a fortress inside his own mind, and he lives there, looking out at the world through a small, heavily guarded window. But even the strongest fortress can be breached. A young boy in the front row, no older than 10, points a finger at Joseph and shouts a cruel word. The word is in French, but its meaning is universal. The boy's father, instead of choosing him, laughs and ruffles his hair. For a fleeting, almost imperceptible moment, you see a flicker of deep, profound pain in Joseph's eyes. The fortress has been breached. The arrow has found its mark. He lowers his head, hiding his face from the relentless, burning stare of 1,000 eyes. The showman's voice drones on, but Joseph hears nothing. He is alone, on a small, brightly lit island, surrounded by a vast, dark ocean of staring faces, and he is drowning. The tour grinds on, a monotonous cycle of humiliation and exhaustion. But in the cracks of this bleak existence, something unexpected begins to grow. It is fragile, and it is forged in the shared furnace of their strange lives. It is a community. You are backstage, in the moments after a show. The public facade has been dropped, and a different kind of life asserts itself. The space is cramped, chaotic, and smells of sweat, cheap greasy paint, and spilled beer. But it is their space. Here, the rules of the outside world are suspended, and the hierarchy of the spectacle is inverted. Albion the giant is sitting on his reinforced crate, his massive frame hunched over. Princess Tiny, whose real name is Lucia, is perched on a small stool beside him. She can't reach his aching back, so she is massaging his enormous, gnarled hand, her tiny fingers working with surprising strength into his swollen knuckles. He grunts with a mixture of pain and relief. It's a gesture of such profound and gentle intimacy that it feels like you are intruding on something sacred. Is that better? Oh, she asks, her voice, without the theatrical, high-pitched tone she uses on stage, is surprisingly low and warm. A bit. Lucy. A bit, he rumbles. It's the damp. Gets in the bones. This is the family they have created. In the outside world, they are monsters and marvels. Objects of fear and fascination. Dear, they are just Al and Lucy. They are friends, bound by a shared experience that no one else could possibly understand. This formation of found families among circus and sideshow performers is a well-documented and deeply touching aspect of their social history. They were a tribe of outcasts, and like any tribe, they developed their own social structures, their own codes of conduct, and their own deep, protective loyalties. You see the Sisters of Siam, Karen's owner, sitting in a corner. They are arguing. Their voices are low, intense hiss of Italian. It's a disagreement about a missed cue during their act. On stage, they are a single, harmonious unit. Here, their individual personalities are on full display. Tara is angry, gesticulating with her free hand. Zola is defensive, her arms crossed. Their argument is a complex, the-handed ballet of frustration. But then, Marco the fire eater comes over. He offers them a shared piece of bread and cheese and makes a silly joke. The tension breaks. The sisters share a look, a small, weary smile, and accept the food. The argument is over, forgotten. In this life, you cannot afford to hold a grudge. Your family, however flawed, is all you have. Where does Joseph Merrick fit into this fragile ecosystem? At first, he is an outsider even among the outsiders. His condition is so extreme, and his ability to communicate so limited, that he is isolated. He sits alone, a silent, shrouded figure in the corner, observing. But slowly, tentatively, he is drawn in. It begins with small gestures. Lucia, the princess, starts serving him a cup of tea, leaving it on the crate beside him without a word. She attests that he struggles with the communal mealtimes. Marco, the fire eater, who has a surprising talent for mending things, notices that the hinge on Joseph's paper modeling case is broken. He takes it and returns it the next day, the hinge fixed with a clever piece of wire. There's a constant, often unstated, debate among historians about the nature of these relationships. Were they born of genuine affection, or were they simply alliances of convenience, a necessary survival strategy? The truth, as is often the case, is likely a complex mix of both. These were not idealized friendships. They were fraught with the same jealousies and tensions as any family, but they were also, at their core, built on a foundation of mutual recognition. In this backstage world, no one stared, no one pointed. Your physical difference was the most normal, most uninteresting thing about you. The turning point for Joseph comes one evening after a particularly cruel crowd. A drunk man had thrown a bottle at the stage, shouting insults. Joseph was shaken. more withdrawn than ever. He is sitting in his corner, his great head in his hands. Albion the giant, who rarely speaks to anyone, shuffles over to him. He stands there for a moment, a huge, silent mountain. Then he reaches into his pocket and pulls out the small, carved wooden bed you saw once before. He doesn't say a word. He just holds it out, offering it to Joseph in his massive, open tone. Joseph looks up. He sees the tiny, delicate bird. He understands the gesture perfectly. It is an offering of peace, of beauty, a small, secret thing to hold against the ugliness of the world. It is a gift from one lonely man to another. Joseph reaches out his one good hand and gently, reverently, touches the bird. He looks up at Albion, and his eyes, for the first time, are not filled with sadness, but with a profound and unmistakable gratitude. He has found his place. He is no longer just a spectacle to be managed. He is part of this strange, broken, and beautiful family. He is home. Life on the road settles into a harsh, repeating rhythm. The citizen crowds blurring into a single, faceless entity. The small moments of connection backstage become the only real landmarks in a sea of monotony. But even in this disconnected, transient world, the past has a way of reaching out, a faint echo from a life that seems a million miles away. Mail call is a rare and momentous event. The tour manager, a gruff, impatient man, receives a bundle of letters at a pre-arranged post office in whatever city they happen to be in. He distributes them with a weary indifference, calling out names, mispronouncing them with English stubbornness. For most of the performers, there is nothing. They have been on the road for years, their ties to their former lives severed by distance, time, and shame. But today, there is a letter for one of the sisters of Siam, Victoria. She takes the thin, slightly crumpled envelope, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. It has been forwarded from city to city, covered in postmarks and scribbled addresses. She turns it over and over in her hands, as if the object itself is a precious artifact. Her sister, Zola, watches her, her expression unreadable. This is a detail of their lives that is easy to forget. Every single performer was once a child. They had families, homes, and a life before the spectacle. Letters from home were lifelines, precious, painful reminders of a world to which they could likely never fully return. For conjoined twins, the situation was even more complex. Their birth was often seen as a source of immense shame for their families, especially in small, religious communities. Many were sold to showmen as infants, never really knowing their parents at all. Jara opens the letter with trembling fingers. Zola leans in close, her head touching her sister's, so she can read it too. The letter is from their mother, in a small village in rural Italy. It is written in a shaky, unpracticed hand, the Italian full of local dialect. As Chiara reads, her face, which is usually so bright and performative, begins to crumble, her shoulders shake with silent sobs. Zola puts her free arm around her, a gesture of both comfort and shared sorrow. Lucia, the princess, comes over and quietly places a hand on Chiara's knee. The backstage world, with its usual clatter and banter, grows quiet. Everyone instinctively understands the sanctity of this moment. They are all, in their own way, exiles from the ordinary world. A letter from that world is a ghost, a beautiful, heartbreaking ghost. You can read the words, but you can guess their content. A mother's love, laced with grief and guilt, news of the village. A marriage, a birth, a death, small. Everyday events that seem to belong to another planet. Perhaps there is a mention of money, a plea for help, or a thank you for funds sent home. Many performers, despite their own meager earnings, were the primary financial support for the very families who had cast them out. The economics of this are as complicated and painful as the emotions. Historians who have managed to unearth personal correspondence from sideshow performers have found them to be invaluable. deeply human documents. They reveal the complex web of relationships that persisted despite the distance. They are filled with longing, with homesickness, with a desperate desire to be seen not as a wonder, but as a son, a daughter, a sister. The question of how their families truly viewed them, as a source of income, a source of shame, or as beloved children, is a topic of endless, and often unanswerable, scholarly inquiry. After a few moments, Kara looks up, her eyes red, and she translates a small part of the letter for the others. Her voice thick with emotion. My little brother, he has a son. They named him after our father. Their baby, the idea of a new life, a normal life, entering their family is almost too much to bear. It is a future they can never have. Saula, who had been the strong, silent one, now begins to weep too, her head resting on her sister's shoulder. They are two halves of a whole, sharing a single, profound wave of grief. Joseph Merrick watches this scene from his corner. He too had a family. He had a mother who, by all accounts, loved him, but whom he lost at a young age. He had a father and a stepmother who eventually rejected him, unable to cope with his condition. He has no one to write him a letter. His past is a locked room, and he has lost the key. He looks at the weeping sisters, and his expression is one of deep, empathetic sorrow. He understands their pain, the ache of a broken connection to the world of family and home. He reaches into his valise, not for his paper church, but for a clean handkerchief. It's one of the few fine things he owns, a gift from Dr. Treves. He shuffles over to the sisters, a slow, laborious journey across the cluttered room. He doesn't speak. He can't. He simply holds out the handkerchief. Kara looks up, her vision blurred by tears. She sees the shrouded, immense figure, the kind eyes, the offered handkerchief. It is a gesture of pure, unadorned compassion. She takes it, and through her tears, she manages a small, watery smile of thanks. In that moment, the entire room is united in a silent, shared understanding. They are not the sum of their strange bodies. They are the sum of their lost homes, their broken families, and the fierce, protective love they have found here, in the shadows, with each other. The years on the road begin to take their toll, not just on the performers' bodies and spirits, but on the very nature of the show itself. A subtle but powerful wind of change is blowing through the world, and it is beginning to rattle the canvas walls of the exhibition tent. It is the wind of science. You are in a lecture hall in Vienna. The room is brightly lit, a stark contrast to the moody gaslight of the shows. It's a world of polished wood, tiered seating, and a clean, intellectual smell of old paper and chalk dust. A distinguished professor with a formidable beard is at the podium, a large anatomical chart displayed behind him. He is delivering a lecture on congenital malformations. He speaks with a calm, rational authority, using a new and precise vocabulary. He talks of genetic anomalies, cellular irregularities, and glandular dysfunctions. He is taking the wonders and mysteries that the Barker souls and is systematically stripping them of their magic, replacing it with cold, hard, medical explanation. This was a profound shift in the late 19th century. Medicine was professionalizing at an incredible rate. The development of germ theory, the refinement of surgical techniques, and a deeper understanding of human biology were transforming the field from a collection of folk remedies and educated guesses into a rigorous, respected science. And one of the areas of intense interest was teratology, the study of abnormalities. The professor projects a slide onto a screen, a new and wondrous technology. It's a stark, black and white photograph of a man with a condition similar to Joseph Merrick's. The audience, composed of medical students and fellow physicians, murmurs with clinical interest. They are not gasping in horror. They are observing, analyzing, taking notes. What we see here, the professor explains, pointing to the image with a long wooden stick, is not the result of a maternal fright. As popular superstition would have it, it is a classic presentation of neurofibromatosis, a disorder of the nervous system that. The language itself is a form of demystification. By giving these conditions scientific names, by explaining their biological origins, medicine was taking them out of the realm of myth and superstition. The elephant man becomes a case of Prout-West syndrome. The lobster boy becomes a case of EC2 road actor Y. The bearded lady becomes a case of hirsutism. The magic is being drained away, one Latin term at a time. This new scientific understanding had a direct and devastating impact on the freak show business. The audience's perception began to shift. Why pay a penny to see a wonder in a tent when you could read about the condition in a medical journal or a popular science magazine? The sense of the unknown, which was the showman's primary stock in trade, was evaporating. You can feel this change back in the show. The crowds are smaller now, and their reactions are different. The guests are fewer. The whispers are less about monsters and more about diseases. You overhear a man in the audience explaining to his wife, in a proud, authoritative tone, that the giant's condition is due to an overactive pituitary gland, a term he has likely just read in a newspaper article. This shift from wonder to clinical understanding is a topic of great interest to social historians. Did it represent a more humane, enlightened view? Or did it simply replace one form of objectification with another? The freak show's age in the medical lecture hall, in some ways, were not so different. Both involved a person being put on display for the observation of others. The key difference was the lens through which they were being viewed. One of myth, the other of medicine. It's debatable which lens was ultimately kinder to the person being observed. This changing scientific tide also presented a strange paradox for the performers. On one hand, the new medical knowledge offered the hope of understanding, and perhaps even treatment. It affirmed that they were not supernatural beings or divine punishments, but people with recognizable, if rare, medical conditions. On the other hand, it threatened their livelihood. They were, in a very real sense, professional marvels. If the world stopped marveling at them, they had nothing left to sell. You see this anxiety play out backstage. Marco the Fire Eater is complaining that the crowds are bored. They've seen it all before. He grumbles. They want something new, something electric. He is referring to the rise of new technological spectacles, moving pictures, electrical demonstrations, that were beginning to compete for the public's entertainment dollar. Tom Norman, the Barker, is trying to adapt. He starts to incorporate the new scientific language into his pitch. A clumsy, awkward fusion of old school humbug and new school science. Come see Giannisha. He'll shout, "A wonder of the Orient," and a textbook example of congenital hypertrophy, as studied by the great doctors of Vienna. The attempt falls flat. It's neither magical enough for the old world nor scientific enough for the new one. The show is caught between two ages, and its foundations are beginning to crumble. The gaslights of the tent are starting to look dim and obsolete in the bright, electric glare of the approaching 20th century. For Joseph and the others, the future, which had always been precarious, is now more uncertain than ever. The change in the air is now palpable. It's not just the scientific explanations that are eroding the foundation of the show. It's a deeper, more fundamental shift in public sentiment. The raw, unapologetic curiosity of the mid-Victorian era is beginning to curdle into something else, something softer, more complicated, and, from a showman's perspective, far less profitable. It is turning into pity. You are standing in the crowd during a performance. Joseph has just been unveiled, but instead of the usual sharp gasps of horror and fear, the reaction is different. It's a low, sorrowful murmur. You hear a woman in front of you whisper to her companion, "Oh, the poor man, it's a tragedy." Her friend nods, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. It seems cruel to stare at him like this. She adds, and yet, she is still staring. This is the great paradox of the new sensibility. The audience is beginning to feel guilty for their own voyeurism. But that guilt doesn't necessarily make them leave the tent. Instead, the nature of the transaction has changed. They are no longer paying for a thrill. They are paying for an emotional experience of a different kind. They are paying to feel sympathy, to have their own compassion affirmed. The spectacle is becoming a form of sentimental charity. This shift from freak to patient, from monster to unfortunate, was a slow and uneven process, and it's a subject of intense study by cultural historians. It was driven by a number of factors: the rise of medical authority, a growing middle-class emphasis on proper and refined sentiment, and the efforts of social reformers who were beginning to campaign against what they saw as the exploitation of the disabled. The performers are caught in the crossfire of this cultural change. On stage, they are expected to be objects of this new, sentimental gaze. You see it in the way they are forced to adapt their acts. Albion the Giant is no longer just a colossus. His backstory now includes a tragic, lost love, a tale designed to elicit tears. The Barker introduces Madame Esmeralda not as a paradox of nature, but as a lonely soul, searching for acceptance in a cruel world. The entire show is being recast as a melodrama, a theatre of suffering. This change is perhaps most visible in the pitch cards being sold. The old, fantastical tales of jungle origins are replaced with new, heart-wrenching and equally fabricated biographies that emphasized piety, loneliness, and a gentle spirit trapped in an unfortunate body. Joseph Merrick's pitch card no longer calls him Giannisha, the sacred monster. It now calls him the Elephant Man, a triumph of the human spirit. And it includes a sentimental poem, allegedly written by Joseph himself, about longing for a mother's love and a home in heaven. Whether this new framing was any less exploitative is a deeply debatable point. Is it better to be stared at with horror, or with condescending pity? Is it better to be an object of fear, or an object of charity? For the performers, it was simply a different kind of cage, a new mask they had to wear, and in many ways, it was a more restrictive one. As a monster, you could be fearsome, powerful, mysterious. As an unfortunate, you were expected to be passive, gentle, and grateful for any kindness shown. You had to perform your own tragedy, night after night. The financial consequences of this shift were disastrous. Pity is a far less potent commercial force than shock. The crowds begin to thin out. Donations to a collection box for the unfortunate start to replace ticket sales. The showman, Tom Norman, is growing more desperate. He can't sell a melodrama as effectively as he sold a marvel. One evening, this new sentiment boils over. A well-dressed woman, a social reformer type with a determined look in her eye, stands up in the middle of the show. "Shame," she shouts, her voice ringing through the tent. "Shame on you for profiting from this poor man's misery, and shame on all of you for encouraging it." The tent falls silent. The woman glares at the Barker, then at the audience, before storming out. Her protest, while disruptive, is a sign of the times. Public opinion is turning. The freak show is no longer seen as a harmless diversion. It is beginning to be seen as a moral failing, a stain on a civilized society. The show limps to a halt. The remaining audience members shuffle out, looking ashamed and uncomfortable. The performers are left on the half-lit stage, in a stunned silence. The woman's cry of shame hangs in the air. They have been selling their strangeness to survive. But now the world has decided that their very existence on this stage is a shameful thing. They are being judged, not for their bodies, but for their complicity in their own exhibition. The ground is crumbling beneath their feet, and the future has never been more uncertain. The social reformers' cry of shame was not an isolated incident. It was a single voice in a rising chorus of public disapproval. The tide has irrevocably turned. Local authorities, once content to take a licensing fee and look the other way, are now under pressure from moral reform societies in the medical establishment. The freak show is no longer just unfashionable, it is becoming illegal. You are in a drab municipal office in Brussels. Tom Norman, the showman, is standing before a stern-looking police official. His usual bluster completely gone, replaced by a desperate, wheedling tone. The official is stamping a document with a heavy, final-sounding thud. The exhibition is closed. Effective immediately, the official says in heavily accented English, not looking up. It is an offense against public decency. You and your chum will vacate the premises by morning. But our contract is for another 2 weeks. Norman sputters. Your contract is irrelevant. This is a matter of law. The official pushes the stamped document across the desk. It is an eviction notice. The show is over. The news hits the backstage community like a physical blow. There is no final grand performance, no tearful farewell. One day, the show is simply gone. The garish banners are torn down. The gaslights are extinguished for the last time, and the performers are unceremoniously dismissed. The found family, which had been their only source of stability, is scattered to the winds. The ensuing scene is one of quiet, desperate chaos. The tour has collapsed mid-journey, leaving them all stranded in a foreign country with little money and no prospects. The showman, Tom Norman, who had once been their protector and their proprietor, is now just another desperate man trying to save himself. In a final, concert, he takes what little money is left from the box office, buys himself a ticket back to England, and abandons his performers, including Joseph. He leaves Joseph with a small sum of money, barely enough for a few days, and disappears. This kind of abandonment was a tragically common fate for performers when a show went bust, left to fend for themselves, often in a country where they didn't speak the language. Their options were grim: beg on the streets, be arrested for vagrancy, or be committed to a workhouse or asylum. You follow Joseph through the cold, unfamiliar streets of Brussels. He is utterly alone, a terrifying and conspicuous figure in his cloak and veiled cap. People shrink away from him on the street, or stare with a mixture of fear and disgust that is no longer mediated by the safety of a stage. Without the structure of the show, he is no longer a wonder. He is just a frightening vagrant. He tries to find passage back to England. You watch as a slick, opportunistic shipping manager takes the last of his money, promising him a place on a ship, only to rob him and leave him stranded on the docks. It is a moment of profound, heartbreaking cruelty. The golden age of the grand sideshow, the era of Barnum's spectacular humbugs and packed exhibition halls, is drawing to a close. Its slow, fading death is a complex historical phenomenon. It was just the pressure from reformers. The rise of cinema offered a new, more thrilling, and less morally complicated form of spectacle. The public's appetite for entertainment was changing. The quiet, static display of human difference seemed slow and old-fashioned compared to the flickering magic of the Nickelodeon. The precise date for the end of the freak show is impossible to pinpoint, and its decline varied from place to place. Some smaller shows persisted well into the 20th century, especially in the carnival midways of America. But the grand, mainstream Victorian freak show was dying. The gaslights were flickering out, one by one. You find Joseph huddled in a corner of a crowded, chaotic train station in Brussels, having been taken there by a sympathetic police officer. He is destitute, terrified, and unable to make himself understood. He has hit rock bottom. His journey as a spectacle has ended in complete and total disaster. But in his darkest moment, a small piece of his past life offers a glimmer of hope. Before leaving London, Dr. Treves, with a remarkable degree of foresight, had given Joseph a small, printed card with his name and the address of the London hospital on it. It was a lifeline, a message in a bottle cast into the uncertain sea of Joseph's future. With trembling, fumbling fingers, Joseph manages to find the card in his pocket. He cannot speak to the officials around him, but he can show them the card. He holds it out to a stern-looking station master. The man takes it, reads the name of the famous London surgeon, and looks from the card to the strange, shrouded figure before him. A look of dawning comprehension crosses his face. The card is his only hope. It is a fragile link back to the one person who saw him not as a monster, not as a ticket seller, but as a man. The final gaslight of the show has gone out, leaving him in darkness. But this small white card is a new kind of light, the promise of a different, and perhaps kinder, future. The journey back to London is a harrowing ordeal, a testament to the small pockets of kindness that can be found in a largely indifferent world. Officials, moved by the sight of Drive, Treeves's card in Joseph's obvious distress, arrange for his passage. He is treated not as a passenger, but as a piece of sensitive cargo, shuttled from train to ferry in a fog of confusion and fear. He finally arrives at Liverpool Street Station in London, exhausted, penniless, and utterly overwhelmed. The station is a cacophony of noise and motion. Whistles shriek, steam hisses, and a river of humanity flows around him. For a man as conspicuous as Joseph, it is a living nightmare. He shrinks into a corner, pulling his cloak tighter around himself. But it's no use. A crowd begins to gather, their curiosity quickly turning to fear and aggression. They press in, shouting, pointing. The safe, managed spectacle of the show has been replaced by the raw, unpredictable terror of a mob. It is here that the police find him, rescuing him from the crush of people and taking him to a waiting room for his own safety. And it is here that they find Drive. Treeves's card and send for the surgeon. You are in that small, quiet waiting room when Treves arrives. He rushes in, his face suched with concern. He sees Joseph huddled on a bench, a figure of profound dejection. Merrick, Treves says, his voice full of a relief that is almost paternal. My dear fellow, you're safe. At the sound of the familiar, respectful voice, Joseph looks up. The journey is over. He has, against all odds, found his way back to the one person who represents a sanctuary. This moment marks the final, decisive turning point in Joseph Merrick's life. Dr. Treves, using his considerable influence, makes a bold and unprecedented appeal. He writes a letter to the Times, the most respected newspaper in the country, describing Joseph's plight. He details his gentle nature, his intelligence, and his desperate need for a permanent home, appealing to the public's charity. The letter is a masterpiece of Victorian sentimentalisms, perfectly calibrated to the changing public mood you witnessed earlier. It frames Joseph not as a curiosity, but as a deserving unfortunate, a man of quiet dignity who has been terribly mistreated by the world. The response is overwhelming. The public, moved by the tragic story, donates a sum of money so substantial that it is enough to guarantee Joseph's care for the rest of his life. With this financial backing, the governors of the London hospital agree to a unique arrangement, one that historians still debate the ethics of. They provide Joseph with a private suite of rooms in a quiet, isolated wing of the hospital. He will not be a patient in the traditional sense, as his condition is incurable. He will be a resident, a permanent guest of the hospital. You now see Joseph in this new home. It's a set of 2 small, ground-floor rooms. They are clean, warm, and simply furnished with a bed, a table, and a few chairs. For the first time in his adult life, he has a space that is entirely his own. A door he can lock, a window that looks out onto a quiet courtyard. Privacy. The years he spends at the London hospital are, by all accounts, the most peaceful of his life. He is free from the relentless public gaze, the exhausting travel, the nightly humiliation. He is treated with kindness and respect by the hospital staff, who come to know the gentle and intelligent man behind the fearsome exterior. He fills his days with simple, quiet pleasures. He reads. He has long conversations with Dr. Treves. Their communication a mixture of Joseph's limited speech and handwritten notes. And, of course, he builds his paper models. His small rooms become filled with them. Intricate, beautiful cathedrals that fill every available surface, a testament to his patient, artistic soul. His world, which had been so vast and chaotic, has now shrunk to the size of these 2 rooms. But within them, He has found a measure of freedom he never knew on the road. He even experiences a taste of the high society that once bade to gawk at him. Dr. Treves, eager to give Joseph a sense of normalcy, begins to introduce him to his friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen of London society, including the famous actress Madge Kendall and even, on one occasion, the Princess of Wales, come to take tea with him in his rooms. This is a strange and poignant final chapter. The very people who might have paid a penny to see the Elephant Man in a tent are now coming to visit Mr. Joseph Merrick in his respectable hospital apartment. It's a sign of his complete transformation in the public eye, from a freak to a celebrated symbol of human endurance. Yet, it is still a form of exhibition. The question lingers, were these society visitors genuinely interested in him as a person? Or was visiting the famous Elephant Man just a new, more refined, more fashionable way to stare? But for Joseph, it is a world of difference. Here, in his own small kingdom, he is the host. He is in control. He serves the tea. He displays his models. He is, for the first time, a man receiving guests in his own home. He is no longer the spectacle. He is the master of the scene. The final, faded gaslight of the freak show is gone, replaced by the steady, gentle lamplight of a room at the London hospital. The years pass, measured not by the changing cities of a tour, but by the quiet changing of the seasons in the hospital courtyard outside his window. Joseph Merrick, now in his late 20s, has found a routine, a rhythm, a fragile peace. His physical health, however, is in steady decline. His heavy head grows ever larger, making mobility more and more difficult. The pain is a constant, unwelcome companion. You are in his rooms. It is a late evening in April of 1890. The space is a sanctuary, a museum of his inner world. The paper cathedrals line the shelves, their delicate spires reaching for the ceiling. Books are piled on a small table. A fire crackles softly in the hearth, casting a warm, gentle glow on the scene. It is a portrait of a life lived quietly, but with a deep and hard-won dignity. Joseph is sitting in his usual armchair, looking into the flames. Dr. Treves is with him, the two men sharing a comfortable silence. They have become close friends, their bond forged in the crucible of Joseph's extraordinary life. Treves is no longer just a doctor. He is Joseph's confidant, his protector, his window to the world. "Are you comfortable, Joseph?" Treves asks gently. Joseph nods, making one of the soft, guttural sounds that Treves has learned to understand. He has been weaker than usual these past few days. There is a deep and poignant longing that has haunted Joseph throughout his life. It is the desire for normalcy, for the simple experiences that others take for granted. More than anything, he has often expressed a wish to sleep lying down, like other people, his entire adult life. He has had to sleep sitting up, his head resting on his knees. To lie down would mean the immense weight of his head would cut off his windpipe, and he would not wake up. It is a simple, human desire, but for him, it is a fatal one. Treves, sensing his friend's weariness, rises to leave. "I'll see you in the morning, my friend. Sleep well." Joseph raises his good hand in a small wave. Treves lets himself out, closing the door softly, leaving Joseph alone with the flickering firelight and his own thoughts. You stay with him, a silent, invisible witness to these final, private moments. He looks around the room, his gaze resting on his creations, on the comfortable chair, on the warm fire. It is a good room. It is a home. He has known kindness here. He has known friendship. He has known peace. He rises slowly, laboriously, from his chair and makes his way to his bed. But tonight, he does not arrange the pillows in the usual, upright configuration. He pushes them aside. He looks at the flat, smooth surface of the mattress. It is an invitation, a promise of a final, deep rest that has always been denied to him. What is he thinking in this moment? Is it a conscious decision? A moment of overwhelming weariness? A final, desperate attempt to feel, just once, what it is like to be like everyone else. Historians and biographers can only speculate. Dr. Treves, in his memoirs, would later posit that Joseph made a deliberate choice to lie down, knowing the consequences. He framed it as an act of will, a tragic but poetic end. Others have suggested it might have been an accident, a simple slip in the night. The truth is unknowable, a final secret that Joseph took with him. He turns and lies down on the bed. On his back, he pulls the covers up. For a moment, he is just a man, lying in his bed, ready for sleep. He has achieved his final, simple wish. You find yourself standing now, not in the room, but in a place outside of time. You are in the silence of an abandoned showground. The sun is setting, casting long, melancholic shadows. The wind whispers through the dry grass where the tent once stood. All the players are gone. The barker, the giant, the princess, the sisters, their stories have faded into the past, leaving only faint echoes. What is the legacy of this strange, cruel, and complex world? It is a story about exploitation and survival, about the profound human capacity to create spectacle out of suffering. It is a story about the shifting, arbitrary line we draw between normal and other, and it is a story about the quiet, resilient dignity of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable hardship. You think of Joseph Merrick. The world remembers him as the Elephant Man, a name born of the freak show's cruel imagination, but you remember him differently. You remember the sad, intelligent eyes. You remember the gentle hand, carefully folding paper into the shape of a cathedral. You remember the man who, when offered a world of cruelty, chose to create beauty. The gawking crowds are long gone, the gaslights are out, and the painted banners have rotted away to dust. But the silent, soaring beauty of his paper churches remains. The story has now come to its end, and as the final images begin to soften and fade, you might find your own thoughts beginning to drift, like embers carried on a gentle night breeze. There is nothing left to do now, nothing at all. The journey is over, and you can allow yourself to sink a little deeper, a little more completely, into the comfort that surrounds you. Let the silence that follows my voice be a soft blanket, wrapping you in a peaceful and well-deserved rest. Let the echoes of the tale dissolve into the quiet rhythm of your own breathing. In and out. Each breath carries you further away from the waking world, and closer to the gentle shores of your own peaceful dreams. The world of gaslight and shadows gives way to a soft, comfortable darkness, a place of deep and profound slumber. The final word has been whispered. If your mind is still gently stirring, you're welcome to drift into another of my stories. If not, I wish you a deep and peaceful slumber. Good night.